Chapter 1408. Put her down. Lin Yu didn't answer. Instead, he said 3 words calmly. Everyone's expression became interesting. In the east courtyard, no one dared to offend the man. At this moment, Lin Yu, who had just woken up, was so calm. However, they couldn't see any cultivation on him. It seems that this person won't be able to walk for a few months, someone said with a sigh. At the same time, there were also people who looked like they were watching a show. This person has just woken up. Let us teach him a lesson and let him know who is the king in the east courtyard, the man's retainer said. He threw a punch at Lin Yu's face. Everyone seemed to have foreseen the result. In this world, the cultivation realm was roughly divided into 1 to 10 steps. Each step was divided into 10 levels. The man's retainer had obviously set foot on cultivation. His single arm had the strength of 1,000 kilograms. At this moment, his punch could even kill a tiger. Lin Yu didn't have any cultivation at all. Moreover, he looked pale and weak. Under this punch, even if he didn't die, he would be paralyzed. The fist wind was strong. However, the scene that everyone expected didn't happen. They saw Lin Yu catch the retainer's fist directly. They could see the pain on the retainer's face. He struggled with all his might, but he found that he couldn't break free no matter how hard he tried. It was as if he had fallen into a swamp. "Let me go!" the retainer shouted loudly. He found that under Lin Yu's strength, the bones in his fist were cracking. The immense pain made him scream uncontrollably. However, Lin Yu didn't seem to hear him. Then, he used a little more strength. Crack, the retainer's arm was broken. Blood splattered everywhere. The terrifying strength not only shattered the retainer's fist, but also his entire arm. The smell of blood filled the air. Even the warm blood splashed on the faces of some of the onlookers. Hiss, some people gasped. However, there were even more people who were stunned on the spot. Lin Yu, who looked weak, actually had such strength, which made everyone incomparably shocked. I didn't see any divine inscriptions on his body, but his strength has already surpassed the first step. Some of the servants had already embarked on the path of cultivation. At this moment, they naturally knew that Lin Yu had not revealed his cultivation level. He had only relied on his own strength. If that was the case, then Lin Yu was too monstrous. Blood splashed onto the man's face, and he froze. This was an outcome that he had not expected. The squire fell to the ground. The immense pain caused him to clutch at his missing arm. He screamed continuously until he fainted. As odd job workers, they had never seen such a bloody scene. The man was dumbfounded. However, he quickly came to his senses. "You dared to kill a servant disciple of the East District. You have already committed a capital offense." The man's eyes gradually darkened. At this moment, he was still holding the pockmarked woman and said, "Today, I will cripple you on behalf of the elder of the odd job division." Lin Yu could easily cripple a first-step cultivator. His strength was at least at the late stage of the first step, which was the 7th or 8th level. The man was fearless. With the resources of his elder brother, he had already stepped into the 2nd step. He only needed to wait for the competition in a month's time to officially become an outer disciple of the Blazing Sky sect. The man was deep in thought. Slap! The crisp sound of a slap resounded through the entire East District. The man was sent flying until he crashed into a huge rock a few feet away before he came to a stop. Lin Yu supported the woman who was on the verge of fainting. Then, he slowly placed her on the ground. Although he had been in a deep sleep, he had already regained consciousness more than 10 days ago. Until now, it had been the pockmarked woman who had been taking care of him. Lin Yu had always been a person who knew how to repay kindness. At this moment, he had appeared to stand up for the pockmarked woman. Without waiting for the man to regain his senses, Lin Yu took a step forward and broke the man's arm. He then stepped forward and grabbed the woman's arm. A painful scream echoed throughout the Odd Job Division East District, scaring away the birds. After the man's scream, the entire East District fell silent. You could even hear a pin drop. Everyone did not even dare to breathe loudly. The man with the strongest cultivation in the Odd Job Division, East District, could not even resist in front of someone who had just woken up. He was completely crushed. Everyone present was terrified. The pockmarked woman was also shocked at this scene. "I want you to die. I want to light you up in a sky lantern," the man cursed. When he looked at Lin Yu's cold eyes, he temporarily forgot his pain and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He realized that Lin Yu's eyes were emotionless. He was like a god of death. Do you know who my elder brother is?" The man was terrified. He could only use his elder brother. However, Lin Yu did not reply. The man wanted to pull back his broken arm. White bones scattered, looking very bloody and ferocious. However, he realized that he could not do it. The difference in strength between the two was too big. The man threatened, "Do you dare to kill me? Not to mention that the elders of the departing sky sect will not forgive you. My elder brother will chase you to the ends of the earth." Obviously, threatening Lin Yu was the most stupid thing to do. Lin Yu took a step forward. When the man thought that he was saved, he pulled back his arm and said, "Do you know fear?" Bang! Before the man could finish his words, a dull sound rang out. The man's head exploded. His brain and blood splattered all over the stones. Lin Yu kicked the man's head. The Odd Job disciples, who had never seen such a bloody scene, could not help but retch. Lin Yu just looked at this scene indifferently. His expression did not change from the beginning to the end. "It's over, it's over. Wang Chong is dead," someone muttered. The man called Wang Chong was so frightened that something greenish-yellow flowed out of his crotch. He fell weakly to the ground. "It has nothing to do with me. I was just watching." The man begged for mercy. However, Lin Yu ignored him. He did not even look at him. Lin Yu had just woken up. He seemed to have lost his cultivation. He had killed the two people just now by relying on the strength of his body. He did not know what had happened. After his resurrection, he seemed to have lost everything. Lin Yu closed his eyes and looked into his sea of consciousness. He realized that his divine sense was still recovering. The stone sword and the clay jar had dimmed. It seemed that the divine items in his divine sense were affected by his death. "Since I'm not dead, it's only a matter of time before I return to my peak." After looking into his body, Lin Yu knew that he had not lost his cultivation. It was just that it was dormant in his body. In fact, it was even stronger. He had completely merged with the great Tao of reincarnation. He was the great Tao of reincarnation. The commotion here finally attracted the elder's attention. He came here and saw the bloody scene. "What happened?" The elder scolded harshly. A murder case in the chores yard was a big deal. If the higher-ups knew, he would be punished. "Elder, save me." As soon as that person woke up, he immediately went on a killing spree. In order to stop him, Wang Chong was already beaten to death. Upon seeing the elder, the lackey crawled to the feet of the elder with tears and snot dripping down his face. He cried and complained about Lin Yu's cruel methods. Chapter 1409. Lin Yu didn't want to expose himself now. When he first awakened, he had already sensed that this world was different. He needed to lie low for a short period of time. After all, he didn't know where the top combat power in this world was. Now that his cultivation hadn't recovered, it wasn't good for others to know. He needed to hide his identity. Lin Yu looked at the elder and released a terrifying spiritual sense, which was as powerful as the sky, towards the elder. Although Lin Yu's divine sense hadn't recovered, he wasn't surprised to see an elder who was only at the third step in this world. He was directly controlled by Lin Yu. The elder's body froze. He was directly refined into a puppet by Lin Yu and was now under his control. The elder looked at the retainer who was holding his ankle and kicked him several feet away. Many of his bones were broken. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. I don't want to hear your side of the story. Men, take these people to the law enforcement hall. I need to investigate this matter thoroughly, the elder said coldly. As he cast a spell, the retainers were tied up by spirit ropes and taken to the law enforcement hall. However, Lin Yu and the pockmarked woman only followed behind the elder. The difference in treatment was self-evident. After they were taken away, the disciples of the law enforcement hall came and cleaned up the corpses. Everything was settled for the time being. Some people were guessing Lin Yu's identity. He was actually treated like this by the elder. Even his elder brother, Wang Chong, who was an inner sect disciple, was killed on the spot. Lin Yu didn't receive any punishment. It seems that man is someone who can't be provoked, someone sighed. After more than 2 hours, Lin Yu brought the pockmarked woman to the chores yard. Everyone was now in awe. After seeing Lin Yu, they all went around and didn't dare to get close. Lin Yu took the healing elixir from the elder and handed it to the woman. Thank you. The pockmarked woman took the elixir timidly. She knew that the pills she obtained from the elders were definitely not cheap. The pockmarked woman did not consume it the first time she saw it. Instead, she wanted to save it. Why not? Lin Yu asked. I want to save it for later use, the pockmarked woman said. You have already injured your muscles and bones. If you don't take it now, it will leave behind hidden injuries in the future and affect your cultivation, Lin Yu said lightly. If you want it, I will ask the elder to send it over. With that, Lin Yu sat cross-legged on the bed. He went to the law enforcement hall to learn more about the current world from the elder. Now, he already knew that the current world was unfathomably vast. This place was called the territory of the state of Chu, but it was just a small place, located in the most eastern part of the continent in a desolate area. Even though the Chu country ruled over countless territories in this world, it still couldn't be ranked. The vastness of this place was most likely comparable to the origin ground. Lin Yu was thinking about what to do next. If he wanted to draw out his sealed strength, he had to make use of the energy substances in this place. Let's cultivate here for a period of time, Lin Yu said. Right now, he did not know what had happened in the origin ground, but being anxious was not a solution. He had to try to break through the Tao-severing realm after recovering his strength. Right now, he had settled down extremely deeply. After experiencing death once, the Tao fruit of 3 lifetimes seemed to have changed. Right now, there was a supreme aura in his body that did not seem to belong to a specific realm. After a day's time, Lin Yu obtained the cultivation method of this world from the pockmarked woman. However, this cultivation method was very crude. Even with Lin Yu's current state and settling down, he could combine the energy substances in this place to create such a cultivation method. Seems like I have to enter the inner part of this sect, Lin Yu said. Right now, before his strength recovered, he did not want to expose his identity. According to the elder, there was a powerhouse of the 6th step in the firmament sect. Based on Lin Yu's current understanding of cultivation, he knew that the 6th step was roughly equivalent to the Emperor realm. Right now, it was not an existence that he could fight against. Moreover, the elder's status was low. He was only at the outermost level, and did not know much about the higher-up. He did not know if there were any hidden powerhouses in the firmament sect. Right now, Lin Yu was only close to the Spirit King realm with his silent spirit and body. He was still a distance away from the Emperor realm. Half a month later, Lin Yu obtained a relatively advanced cultivation method from the elder. However, this was only the 3rd step. Moreover, the absorption of the energy substances in this world was extremely slow. For Lin Yu, it was almost negligible. It was not as fast as the devouring starry sky that Lin Yu could barely use. During this time, the pockmarked woman had been taking care of Lin Yu's daily life. No one dared to gossip about it. They all stayed away from Lin Yu's residence. Only the pockmarked woman dared to approach and enter. After this period of time, Lin Yu learned the pockmarked woman's name, Yu Weiwei. She came from a poor family. 5 years ago, she was selected to enter the firmament sect. However, because of her ordinary aptitude, she stayed in the chores yard for 5 years. Because she was born with a hunched back and pock-marked face, she had to endure humiliation. It was because of this that she was reluctant to use the healing pills and wanted to sell them to support her family. In half a month, it will be the day of the chores selection. Will you be there then, Sir Lin? Yu Weiwei asked. Lin Yu nodded. He needed to enter the upper echelons of the firmament sect and obtain more advanced cultivation methods. Since he did not want his identity to be exposed, this was the only way. Yu Weiwei smiled and said, I congratulate you first, Sir Lin. After this period of time, although Lin Weiwei was not good-looking and had a lonely personality, she was very kind and took care of Lin Yu meticulously. Now that she was no longer bullied by the chores yard, her personality was much more cheerful. Ever since she was born, Lin Yu was the only ray of light other than her parents who illuminated her life. Now that the pills that were given once every half a month were no longer deducted, Yu Weiwei also had cultivation resources. Now there was a faintly discernible qi in her body. According to the saying of this world, the first step to embark on cultivation was to discover one's own qi. Now, under Lin Yu's casual guidance, Yu Weiwei's cultivation had also improved, which made her very happy. Lin Yu had now stepped into the second step after cultivation. There were no surprises in the selection. During the selection, he did not intend to hide himself. What he wanted was to amaze everyone and attract everyone's attention. He wanted to get the best resources. He needed to recover his strength in the shortest time possible. As for the chores among the chores yard, in order to please Lin Yu, there were people fighting to do it for him every day. As for these, he did not need to worry about it. A few days later, an uninvited guest came to the chores yard. It was a man wearing a long robe with white clouds and flowing sleeves. He walked with a majestic gait and there was a cold look in his eyes. That was the uniform of an inner disciple. At this moment, the chores yard could only retreat when they saw him. Where is the person who killed my brother? He shouted coldly. His voice was like thunder, and some people could not bear it and fell to the ground. Everyone was terrified. Sir Lin, don't go out, Yu Weiwei said in fear. An inner disciple was an unattainable existence for the chores yard. Although she knew that Lin Yu was powerful, she was not confident in facing an inner disciple. She was worried that Lin Yu would be killed because of this. Chapter 14:10. However, Lin Yu remained calm. He gestured for Yu Weiwei not to worry before standing up and walking out of the courtyard. Even though he didn't want to expose himself during this period of time, since trouble had come knocking on his door, it wasn't his style to back down. You're the one. Wang Chang's elder brother was called Wang Yu. Even though he wasn't the strongest in the inner sect, he was still a powerful cultivator of the third step. That's right, Lin Yu replied slowly. 20 days ago, the elder had already listed Wang Chang's crimes. Bullying fellow disciples, killing a servant. Adding all these crimes together, it was enough for him to die several times over. Lin Yu didn't hold Wang Chong responsible for his death. At this moment, Wang Yu arrived at this place. Seeing Lin Yu, he slowly said, although my brother is disappointing, but he is not someone that can be killed by any random person. Now, I don't want to use him in the chores court. In a few days, during the sect selection, I will personally kill you. All right, Lin Yu replied calmly. Facing Wang Chuan's threat, he wasn't afraid at all. On the day of the sect selection, the inner sect disciples would appear and guide the newly promoted inner sect disciples. But at the same time, they could also choose to enter the life and death arena to settle their grudges. Hearing those words, Wang Yu's eyes narrowed. He didn't expect Lin Yu to agree so readily. Furthermore, he could clearly sense the calmness in Lin Yu's eyes. It was as though he didn't fear him at all. Very good, Wang Yu nodded. If you're done speaking, you can scram. "There's no need for a dead person to appear before me," Lin Yu said before turning around and leaving. Wang Yu remained on the spot. With a sinister look in his eyes, he said, "Do you think that I don't dare to kill you now? You can try." Lin Yu didn't turn his head and just said casually, "If not for the fact that he was an inner sect disciple with a higher status in the Sky Departing sect, Lin Yu would be in trouble if he killed him now. Otherwise, with Lin Yu's temperament, how could he have kept him alive until now? He was merely at the third step. To Lin Yu, killing him was merely a glance. In this world's cultivation system, the biggest gap was between the third step and the fourth step. After stepping into the fourth step, there was a broad road ahead. There were many cultivators who were stuck at the third step. The difference in strength between them was also like a natural chasm that could not be crossed. Seeing Lin Yu's nonchalant tone, Wang Yu was infuriated. However, he wasn't as foolish as Wang Chong. He knew that the reason why the other party was so calm was because he had something to rely on. But what kind of shameful method was this? In the life and death arena, Lin Yu would not be able to use his power with the elders present. "Very good, you have successfully aroused your killing intent," Wang Yu coldly said. However, Lin Yu didn't respond. At this time, Lin Yu had already entered the room. As an inner sect disciple, Wang Yu was surrounded by tens of thousands of people whenever he walked in the sect. When had he ever been treated in such a manner by a servant? The killing intent in his eyes could no longer be concealed. However, now wasn't the best time to make a move. After issuing the challenge, he left quickly. Lin Yu walked into the room and drank his tea, as though he wasn't bothered by Wang Yu's provocation at all. Yu Weiwei was confused. "That's an inner sect disciple. Young Master Lin, aren't you afraid?" Yu Weiwei's heart was still beating fast. She was afraid that Wang Yu would make a move on him. Lin Yu shook his head calmly. Previously, he was about to break through to the utmost being. Even the 10th step of this world couldn't compare to him. He had already gotten sick of these small fights during his reincarnation. The reason why he accepted Wang Yu's challenge was because he didn't want to leave any trouble behind. He wasn't bothered by the fact that he was an inner sect disciple or a third step cultivator. To Lin Yu, these were just insignificant things. In the blink of an eye, a few days passed. The morning sun shone down on the servant courtyard. The outer sect disciples were here to count the number of disciples who were participating in the selection. Lin Yu, second step. He announced his cultivation state. The outer sect disciples used their weapons to check out his cultivation state. They looked at Lin Yu with a trace of surprise in their eyes. That was because they had been here the previous year as well. However, they did not catch sight of Lin Yu. In other words, Lin Yu had only been in the heaven abandoning sect for a year. To think that he would be able to reach the second step right away. This cultivation speed had them sweating. Compared to most of the outer sect disciples, he was way stronger. Seems like there's going to be another genius in the inner sect. The two outer sect disciples praised without holding back. They still did not know about the grudge between Lin Yu and Wang Yu. If they knew, they wouldn't have tried to get close to Lin Yu. Yu Weiwei and the others followed Lin Yu to the selection grounds of the inner sect. On the day of the selection, all the servant disciples did not have to do any work. They could observe the selection to motivate the servants. "Young Master Lin, be careful," Yu Weiwei said timidly. She was a little scared in front of so many people. This was her first time observing the selection since she entered the sect 5 years ago. The servants from the other 3 courtyards had also arrived. They were all standing outside the grounds. At this moment, someone saw Yu Weiwei and frowned. "Who is this person? What an eyesore!" "Shoo!" A servant from the east courtyard who was familiar with him immediately covered his mouth. He was afraid that he would bring disaster upon himself because of his blabbering. That person did not understand. After the servant from the east courtyard explained it to him, he tactfully shut his mouth and did not dare to say another word. This person even dared to kill Wang Chong. If he was unhappy, he would not even have a place to cry. On the high platform were the outer sect elders of the Heaven Abandoning sect. The Heaven Abandoning sect placed great importance on the selection of servants. After all, they were the seedlings of the sect and represented the future of the sect. At this moment, Wang Yu was standing behind an elder. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he looked at Lin Yu. Some of the outer sect female disciples were flirting. When they saw Lin Yu, they said, "Who is this person? He's so handsome. I can already imagine how my future companion will look like." A pretty female disciple said with a smile. "Shameless." A female disciple by the side said, "Sister, perhaps you haven't taken your eyes off him." A pretty female disciple was not to be outdone. As the elder on the platform spoke, it was like a loud bell that rang in everyone's ears. After he finished his opening speech, the selection officially began. The selection was carried out in the form of a competition. In the competition, Lin Yu had always defeated his opponents with a single move. Some people could not help but notice Lin Yu. Some of the female disciples were even looking at him with starry eyes. "Is this the person you want to kill later?" At this moment, a good friend of Wang Yu said with a smile. Wang Yu nodded. Seeing Lin Yu's performance, he was not moved in the slightest. Most of the servants participating in the selection were at the initial stage of the first step. Only a few of them were at the second step. Chapter 14:11. In less than 2 hours, more than half of the grand competition had passed. This was because Lin Yu was too strong. Almost all of his opponents were defeated in a single move. Just after Wang Yu spoke, in front of Lin Yu, the second-step disciples from the other chore's yard were directly knocked off the stage without any room to resist. "Seems like that guy is a little troublesome. Brother Wang, be careful later," the man beside him reminded. "Humph, he's just a servant." Wang Yu snorted. He did not believe that after cultivating for so many years in the sect, he could not be compared to a servant. At this moment, the grand competition had come to an end. Without a doubt, Lin Yu was the champion. The outer sect elder was pleased, but it was not the time for him to announce it. Wang Yu walked down. "Elder, inner sect disciple Wang Yu is here to take first place in the grand competition," Wang Yu said slowly. However, the inner sect elder frowned when he heard this. He was in the same realm as Wang Yu, and he could sense the killing intent coming from Wang Yu. He seemed to be here to kill Lin Yu on purpose. Lin Yu's talent was obvious to all. If he was really killed by Wang Yu, it would be a great loss to the entire outer sect and even Blazing Heaven sect. However, this was the rule. They could only wait and see how Lin Yu would perform. "Elder, there won't be any problems if I kill someone on the life and death ring, right?" Lin Yu asked for confirmation. Otherwise, if he killed an inner sect disciple, it would bring him a lot of trouble. "No." The elder was a little confused. He did not understand what Lin Yu was talking about. No matter how strong Lin Yu was in the servant selection, he did not know who he would be facing. However, he did not understand who his next opponent was. It was Wang Yu, who had been cultivating in the inner sect for a few years. Wang Yu was in the middle of the third step. "Then I'm relieved." Lin Yu nodded. "Very good. I hope you can still be so calm later," Wang Yu said with a mocking tone. Both of them stepped onto the life and death arena. Now, all the girls who adored Lin Yu covered their mouths unconsciously. They did not know when Lin Yu had offended the inner sect disciple, Wang Yu. No matter how stunning he was, he had only stayed in the servant courtyard for a year. Facing Wang Yu, who had been famous for a long time, he was probably doomed. "Do you think that just because you performed amazingly in the competition, the elders will show you mercy and let me spare you?" Wang Yu said. Lin Yu looked at Wang Yu indifferently. It was as if he was looking at a clown. Since a stepping stone had appeared, Lin Yu could only accept it. "On the life and death arena, once you step onto the arena, your life and death will be determined," the elder announced. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the battle stage. Although Lin Yu was now wearing the linen clothes of a handyman, it was still difficult to conceal his appearance and temperament. With one hand behind his back, he was incomparably calm. "Make your move. Otherwise, you won't have a chance," Lin Yu said. This sentence caused an uproar in the crowd. Everyone had a look of disbelief on their faces. Lin Yu was too arrogant. Wang Yu was also stunned. Shouldn't he be the one saying that? "You're courting death," Wang Yu said darkly. With a pinch of his fingers, flames enveloped the entire battle stage. The flames surged and all of them attacked Lin Yu. The flames reflected in Lin Yu's eyes. He did not dodge. Under the astonished eyes of the crowd, he actually stepped forward. Bathed in the flames, he arrived in front of Wang Yu. "I've given you a chance. However, this little bit of strength is disappointing." Lin Yu shook his head. He attacked fiercely and threw out a punch. Wang Yu was caught off guard. He did not expect Lin Yu to use such a strong stance to break his technique. However, it was all too late. Lin Yu attacked mercilessly. The wind from his fist was vast and mighty, rolling up tongues of flames. Puff! Wang Yu's chest suffered a heavy blow, and he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. Although Lin Yu was only in the second step, the strength of his previous battle constitution was still there. One had to know that Lin Yu's battle constitution had broken through to the highest level back then. Although it was dormant now, it was still not something that ordinary cultivators could break with simple spells. Lin Yu showed a crushing momentum and took a step forward. Wang Yu, who had not fallen to the ground, was directly stepped on in the chest. Lin Yu stepped on Wang Yu and fell to the ground. A hole was smashed in the battle stage. You! At this moment, Wang Yu's eyes finally revealed fear. However, it was impossible for him to say anything now. His mouth and nose were bleeding, making his words unclear. He seemed to be begging for mercy. However, Lin Yu did not give him the slightest chance. A stream of energy condensed in his hand, turning into a long blade. When it came into contact with the air, a piercing sound was heard. At this moment, the elders who were watching the match stood up. In the face of Lin Yu's battle prowess, they were all shocked. He can use Genesis Chi to such an extent, and the strength of his physical body is already unimaginable. An outer sect elder could not help but tremble. "He's definitely a peerless genius," someone said. All eyes were gathered on Lin Yu. However, Lin Yu did not seem to feel anything at this moment. Wang Yu's master roared and turned into a gust of wind. "It's just a sect competition, why are you so fierce?" He stepped down from the stage to save his disciple. However, Lin Yu was merciless. Since he had attacked, he would not show any mercy. Puff! The blade light condensed from Genesis Chi directly beheaded Wang Yu. Blood splattered everywhere, looking very sinister. Very good. Wang Yu's master gritted his teeth. He had a very high status in the inner sect. He had originally believed that as long as he spoke, Lin Yu, who had just been promoted to a worker disciple, would not dare to make a move. However, the result was something he had not expected. Lin Yu's decisiveness had exceeded everyone's expectations. Wang Yu's master was at the fifth step, and was considered a powerful existence in the Sky Parting sect. He was comparable to the Spirit King stage. However, this was not an existence that Lin Yu could not defeat. Just as Lin Yu was about to make his move, the first elder of the outer sect, a white-haired old man, arrived in front of Lin Yu. With a wave of his sleeve, a barrier appeared in front of him as he unhurriedly said, "Once one steps onto the deathmatch arena, life and death will not matter. Does inner sect elder Jean wish to break the rules?" Wang Yu's master was stopped. He knew that the first elder's strength was definitely not an existence that he could match. Even if he had been injured for some unknown reason several decades ago, he still had the strength of a peak fifth step expert. "Elder Gu, could it be that you wish to stop me?" Wang Yu's master said with a threatening tone. "You can go find the sect master. The first elder did not say anything else and directly said, Wang Yu's master stopped. Wang Yu was his most beloved disciple, but it was reasonable that he had been killed on the deathmatch arena. He did not have the slightest reason. If he really went to the sect master, he would definitely be punished. Wang Yu's master looked at Lin Yu and slowly said, Humph, you won't have the chance to enter the inner sect. This was filled with threats. He had great authority in the inner sect, and this was not child's play. Lin Yu was not the slightest bit afraid. He had already learned from the puppet elder that the first elder of the outer sect had an extraordinary status. He had once been a strong contender for the position of sect master, but for some unknown reason, he had been seriously injured and his cultivation level had dropped. Chapter 14:12. It was said that he had once entered a relic and obtained an unimaginable cultivation technique. As a result, he was severely injured. However, it was unknown whether he was framed or injured by the relic. With the departure of Wang Yu's master, everything came to an end. The first elder looked at Lin Yu and nodded slightly. He could also see that Lin Yu was not ordinary from Lin Yu's eyes. Lin Yu followed a group of servants who had passed the competition and entered the outer court. Every inner court disciple had their own cave abode. They could let a servant take care of their daily needs. This was the privilege of an outer court disciple. Lin Yu chose Yu Weiwei. This was understandable. If only Lin Yu had chosen me, said a girl from the outer sect. Many people's eyes were filled with sadness. You're an outer court disciple. Someone rolled their eyes. So what if I'm an outer court disciple? I'm willing to be by his side. A beautiful girl said. You're willing to do that kind of thing too? Someone beside her teased. Of course, she said subconsciously when she saw that Lin Yu was in a daze. When she came back to her senses, she immediately said, Bah! A few days passed. Lin Yu was now sitting cross-legged in the cave abode. The first elder had arrived. Yu Weiwei immediately poured tea. Yu Weiwei was very excited to be so close to the first elder. This was something she had never imagined in her life. Now that she was Lin Yu's servant, her status and salary were much better than that of a servant disciple. She was very satisfied. Moreover, with Lin Yu's current strength, no one in the outer court dared to provoke him. Even some elders welcomed Lin Yu with a smile. You're the person that Elder Mo and the others brought back, right? The first elder asked. Yes. Lin Yu did not hide it. Did you see the two people who entered the forbidden area? The first elder's eyes were filled with sadness. Lin Yu recalled that when he had just recovered, there were indeed two people beside him. However, he wasn't sure if they were the people the great elder wanted to know about. Indeed, I saw two people outside the forbidden area. They were being chased into the forbidden area, said Lin Yu. He didn't tell the first elder that he had walked out from the forbidden area. If they knew that he had walked out from the forbidden area, he didn't know what kind of storm it would cause. Is that so? The great elder sighed. He didn't ask further. This is a very strange technique. Whether or not you can comprehend it will depend on your luck. The great elder took out a book that had already turned yellow. There was an unknown ancient font written in it. However, with merely a single glance one could tell how extraordinary that technique was. It was surrounded by traces of the great Tao. Anyone who took a glance at it would unconsciously fall into a state of silence. The inner sect is decaying. With your talent, there won't be a problem for you to enter. However, because of that person's obstruction, you'll have to stay in the outer sect in the future, said the great elder. He had already passed on the cultivation technique he had obtained to Lin Yu. It seemed that he wanted to pass on his legacy. Lin Yu nodded. This was a favor. He recalled that there seemed to be a method of refining pills in this world as well. First elder, I have a request, said Lin Yu. Go ahead. The great elder placed his hands behind his back and said, As long as it's within my power. It's not a big deal. I'd like a book on refining pills in the sect, said Lin Yu. This world was different from the universe in the past. The treasures in this world would definitely be different as well. However, Lin Yu had analyzed the pills distributed by the sect. There was not much difference in the refining method and medicinal efficacy. Due to the rich Genesis Qi in this world, the medicinal efficacy of the pills was much purer than the pills of the same level in the universe. This was not a problem for Lin Yu. Now that he wanted to quickly recover his strength, he needed to comprehend the techniques of this world. In addition to obtaining cultivation techniques, the support of pills would naturally be much faster. The Great Elder glanced at Lin Yu and said, "Yes, I'll have someone send it over." Lin Yu was touched by the Great Elder's unreserved trust in him. "This is my token. If you want to refine pills, you can go to the outer sect alchemy room and take any herbs," said the Great Elder as he handed over an ancient token. This was the highest authority in the outer sect. With this token, Lin Yu could do whatever he wanted in the outer sect. No one would dare to stop him. "Thank you, Great Elder." Lin Yu clasped his hands together. Given his status and strength, there was naturally no need for him to bow. He only expressed his gratitude. After the Great Elder left, a few hours later, someone sent over books on alchemy. It only took Lin Yu a day to digest all the profound books that were for alchemists. The next day, Lin Yu went to the alchemy room. Most of the people here were refining foundation establishment pills. It was the kind of pill that ordinary workers would receive every half a month. It could help the workers to quickly discover the Xiantian Qi in their bodies. "Lin Yu, what are you doing here?" asked the Great Elder who was guarding the door. Lin Yu's name was now famous in the outer sect. The Great Elder and the disciples all knew Lin Yu. "I'm here to try refining pills," Lin Yu said indifferently. "You!" The Great Elder did not believe him. "Refining pills is not a child's play." The Great Elder rejected. Lin Yu took out the Great Elder's token. "This." The Great Elder pondered for a while, but still led Lin Yu into the alchemy room. "Although you have the Great Elder's token, I still have to tell you that refining pills is dangerous. It's not something you can try after reading a few books." The Great Elder reminded him out of kindness. In the alchemy room, there were a few alchemy furnaces that were burning with flames. There were a few disciples who were constantly carrying the required herbs for the alchemists. When he entered, he was greeted with a medicinal fragrance. The pretty lady who was on the spectator stand during the grand competition was here too. However, she had just started refining pills and was still learning from her master. When she saw Lin Yu, her beautiful eyes shone. "Junior brother Lin, I didn't expect you to be here." The girl went forward and teased, "Why don't you call me senior sister?" She did not know Lin Yu's strength. If she dared to tease Lin Yu in the universe and the land of origin, the grass on her grave would be dozens of feet high. Lin Yu ignored the girl. Whether it was her figure or her appearance, she was considered one of the best in the outer sect. However, Lin Yu did not even look at her. Instead, he went to the medicine room. This made the pretty girl a little hurt, but she was not discouraged. At this time, she followed Lin Yu to the medicine room. 7-star grass, blood coagulation fruit, yellow snake root. Lin Yu took out the Great Elder's token and pointed to a few herbs. After seeing the herbs that Lin Yu pointed to, the Great Elder in charge of the medicine room naturally knew that Lin Yu wanted to refine the foundation establishment pill. There was surprise in his eyes. Lin Yu had just been promoted to the inner sect, but now he wanted to try to refine pills. Although the foundation establishment pill was a very simple pill, without a second-stage alchemist, the failure rate was almost 90%. Lin Yu casually took the herbs and was not afraid of the mixed effects of several herbs. Obviously, he was a newbie. "Lin Yu, if you want to refine pills, why don't you stay in the alchemy room for a while? I'll let an alchemist teach you personally," the Great Elder reminded. Refining pills required extremely high talent and conditions. If he forced himself to refine pills, Even if it was just an ordinary foundation establishment pill, if the pill exploded, a second-step cultivator would not be able to bear it. He might die because of it. Chapter 14:13. Lin Yu expressed his gratitude for the elder's kindness. However, when he was in the 12 universes, he had obtained the Pill King's inheritance. After so many years, although he had not refined pills for a long time, Lin Yu's current alchemy strength was already unimaginable. He had read the ancient alchemy books of this world in order to understand the medicinal properties of this world. From his understanding, it was obvious that the alchemy methods of this world were no different from those of this universe. Although some medicinal herbs had different names, there was no difference in their medicinal properties. The elder sighed slightly. I admit that your talent is terrifying, but alchemy is different from cultivation, the elder continued. Elder, you don't have to say any more, I know what I'm doing, said Lin Yu. Lin Yu had the first elder's token, so the elder did not dare to say anything. Lin Yu had already arrived in front of an idle alchemy furnace. He looked at the several medicinal herbs in his hand, and after a simple identification, he ignited the furnace with Genesis Chi. Under the constant heating, the walls of the furnace were already red. In this alchemy room, there were people who knew that Lin Yu had come. They all curiously approached and surrounded Lin Yu. At this time, there was a proud and arrogant alchemist. He was a rare grade 4 alchemist in the entire outer sect. He looked at Lin Yu's crude methods and could not help but sigh. Forcefully refining pills, it seems that this old man will be in trouble in a while. He believed that Lin Yu was bound to fail, but now in the entire outer sect, he was the only one with the highest grade. The explosion of the furnace was very terrifying, and only an alchemist like him had the means to resist it. He saw that the walls of the furnace were already red. The flames inside were burning the Genesis Chi, making crackling sounds. Lin Yu had a premonition that the heat was enough. He directly threw all the medicinal pills into the furnace. Do you want to die? The grade 4 alchemist frowned, and he was ready to act. Lin Yu was too reckless. Alchemy requires strict control over the details. Throwing everything into it is already a huge taboo. The elder in the alchemy room exclaimed in shock. They were ready to act at any time to save Lin Yu. They all knew that Lin Yu already had the first elder's token, which meant that the first elder had already regarded him as the successor. Lin Yu could not allow any danger to appear. Just as the alchemists were about to make a move, the person in charge of this place, which was the grade 4 alchemist, stopped everyone at this moment and hurriedly said, Wait. Lin Yu's hands were forming a few complicated seals. He used his spiritual sense to control a few medicinal herbs. This time, they surrounded the flames. Of course, Lin Yu had only used his second step divine telekinesis. However, although Lin Yu's technique looked shaky, there was a hint of nimbleness to it. It was as if an immortal was casually waving his hand. This technique, at this moment the grade 4 alchemist was shocked. With his second step cultivation, he could actually reach this step. His level of control over alchemy had even surpassed his own. He could not help but be very surprised. The control of alchemy also required a corresponding realm. For example, the current grade 4 alchemist was already at the 5th step of cultivation. He was very powerful. Even in the sky-leaving sect, he was a mainstay and a high-level existence. Alchemists were rare. This grade 4 alchemist was even more respected in the sky-leaving sect. He was confident that there were only a few alchemists in the sky-leaving sect who could surprise him with their alchemy technique. However, now a disciple who had just entered the inner sect had such a profound alchemy technique. It was really surprising. Under Lin Yu's continuous control, some medicinal herbs turned into powder, some medicinal herbs turned into liquid and slowly fused together. Suddenly, the medicinal fragrance assailed the nostrils. It filled the entire alchemy room. In the alchemy room, there was a faint sound of thunder. One could see that there were small lightning bolts on the embryonic form of the pill. It's the Supreme Grade Foundation Establishment Pill. Everyone was shocked. In the alchemy room, everyone knew the reason for this phenomenon. Only the Supreme Grade Foundation Establishment Pill could produce such a phenomenon, even if it was only a first-grade pill. As Lin Yu spread out his hands and opened the alchemy furnace, a medicinal fragrance that was dozens of times stronger than before instantly filled the air. Just by smelling it, one's body would feel comfortable and refreshed. No, this is not a first-grade foundation establishment pill. The Grade 4 alchemist was extremely shocked at this moment. In his life, he had never seen anyone who could use first-grade medicinal herbs to refine a pill that surpassed the first grade. This was the rule between heaven and earth. However, the 3 nail-sized pills in Lin Yu's hands had obviously surpassed the first grade and entered the second grade. Lin Yu, let me see. At this moment, the Grade 4 alchemist looked excited. He had an almost crazy obsession with alchemy. At this moment, as if he had seen a miracle, he looked very excited. Lin Yu was not stingy. Instead, he directly sent the 3 pills into the hands of the Grade 4 alchemist. These were just pills that he had casually refined. It seems that the alchemy methods here are not very different from those in the surrounding areas. Lin Yu thought to himself. Now, he could make use of his alchemy skills to advance rapidly in the sky-leaving sect. Miracle, this is a miracle! The Grade 4 alchemist was extremely excited. He stared at the pills that were intertwined with pill patterns and his whole body was trembling. Everyone was hesitant. They had never seen the usually strict and unsmiling fourth-rank alchemist become so excited to such an extent. It seems to be a legendary alchemy method. The Grade 4 alchemist muttered as he fell into deep thought. I wonder who Alchemist Lin's master is? The Grade 4 alchemist could not help but ask. He no longer regarded Lin Yu as an outer sect disciple, but as a peer of the same generation. My master is a wild crane that does not like to be known by others, Lin Yu said at this moment. He did not want to expose himself. However, after thinking about the Grade 4 alchemist's words, Lin Yu fell into deep thought. The Grade 4 alchemist said that the alchemy method that Lin Yu used was a legendary ancient method. What was the relationship between the alchemy method passed down in the universe and this world? Could it be that this world had been connected to the universe for an unknown period of time? Lin Yu did not know the specifics. Therefore, he just evaded and said, I don't know. What my master taught me is an ancient method in the alchemy world. That's true. Such a senior expert probably came from the distant central area. The Grade 4 alchemist nodded and said, My name is Chen Shu, the chief alchemist of the outer sect. The Grade 4 alchemist introduced himself at this moment. He had already regarded Lin Yu as a peer. There was even a trace of respect. He did not know Lin Yu's current level as an alchemist, but he could refine a flawless foundation establishment pill at the second step and forcibly raise the grade of the pill. This method was not something that a Grade 4 alchemist could do. The beautiful girl's cherry lips formed an O shape. At this moment, her beautiful eyes were full of worship and admiration. Lin Yu was not only handsome, his cultivation was strong, and his attainments in alchemy were also very high. This made him look at him in a new light. He already looked like a dream lover. Chapter 14:14 Elder Chen, there's no need to stand on ceremony, Lin Yu said. His alchemy skills were much better than Chen Shu's, but he wasn't arrogant. Because of Lin Yu's current realm, he couldn't refine pills of too high a grade. He came here today to test himself and see if he could refine pills in this world. It was possible now. Chen Shu was extremely excited. He pulled Lin Yu and chatted nonstop. As he got to know Lin Fan better, Chen Shu's expression changed from doubt to enlightenment and then to admiration. He already saw Lin Yu as his senior. However, the purpose of Lin Yu's visit today was to test the alchemy method. He asked for a few more herbs. Chen Shu surrounded Lin Yu and personally went to get the pills. Unknowingly, a handwritten letter had appeared in his hand. He watched as Lin Yu prepared to refine pills and started to record every detail. This was Lin Yu's permission. Seeing how obsessed Chen Shu was with alchemy, he didn't say much. As for how much he understood, it was all up to him. Face sculpting pill. At this time, Lin Yu found this kind of elixir from the Elixir King's inheritance. Although it was only a casual refinement, the abnormal phenomenon caused by the refinement still caused everyone to feel apprehensive. This place formed the elixir peak. Chen Shu's brush and ink danced in the air. Even in the process of refining pills, it was just a coincidence. When he fell into a certain state, there would be a pill wind. However, looking at Lin Yu's current state, he seemed to be very casual. This wasn't a coincidence. Not long after, 2 face sculpting pills appeared in the cauldron. There was a certain warmth in them. Lin Yu held the 2 pills in his hands. He couldn't help but sigh and say, "It seems that my technique is still a little rusty." This was a type of 3rd-grade pill. Logically speaking, it should be very easy for Lin Yu to do this. It was natural for him to form a vision. However, Lin Yu had only created a grade 3 pill. "Master Lin, may I ask what kind of pill this is?" Chen Shu humbly asked. "This pill is called the face sculpting pill. It's of little value and only has the effect of preserving and sculpting a woman's appearance," Lin Yu said. After hearing Lin Yu's words, the pretty woman's eyes lit up. Which woman in the world didn't like to be beautiful? When she heard Lin Yu's explanation, her eyes immediately sparkled. She stared at the pill in Lin Yu's hand. She wanted to trade, but she didn't know where to start. "This is of no use to me. You can have it." Lin Yu tossed a pill casually to the pretty lady. Then, he kept one for himself. The woman was extremely excited. He knew from Lin Yu that it was a 3rd-grade pill. Even if it was of little use, it was still an irresistible temptation for women. At this moment, even Chen Shu was envious. She wanted nothing more than to snatch the pill from the pretty disciple. But for the sake of his reputation, he immediately stopped thinking about it. He already had a few flawless foundation establishment pills on him. Lin Yu didn't ask for them back. Then, Lin Yu gradually mastered the art of alchemy and made a few useful pills for himself. Then, he prepared to leave the alchemy room. As far as Lin Yu was concerned, the alchemy room was too barren. Many of the medicinal pills he needed were not available. Chen Shu patted his chest and promised that he would find all the herbs that Lin Yu needed in a few days. This was a rare opportunity for Chen Shu to learn the art of alchemy. "Thank you very much, Elder Chen." Lin Yu expressed his gratitude. Chen Shu had already started to master the ancient art of alchemy. To Lin Yu, it was a little surprising. His talent in alchemy was very high, but it was limited by the environment. Otherwise, Chen Shu's rank would be higher than 4th grade. After leaving the alchemy room, Lin Yu returned to his cave. It was already dusk. He saw that Yu Weiwei was already waiting outside the cave. She had already prepared a meal and was heating it up in the pot. "Sir Lin, I'll bring the food up immediately," Yu Weiwei said. "Thank you for your hard work," Lin Yu said. "Sir, what are you saying? I'm your servant. It's my duty to do this." Yu Weiwei lowered her head. Not long after, 8 hot dishes were placed on the table. There were meat and vegetables. Yu Weiwei stood respectfully to the side, holding a rag in her hand. "Sit down and eat together," Lin Yu said. His cultivation level wasn't very high. Although he could borrow the Genesis Chi of heaven and earth to replenish his body, he still hadn't reached the level of fasting. No, I'll just stand to the side." Yu Weiwei hurriedly waved her hand. "This is an order," Lin Yu calmly said as he picked up a piece of fish and put it in his mouth. Go get another set of chopsticks," Lin Yu said indifferently. "Yes, thank you, sir." Yu Weiwei clearly wasn't used to it. She went to the kitchen and brought another set of chopsticks and bowls. She skillfully poured a bowl of rice for Lin Yu. "Sir, you're the best person in the world to me," Yu Weiwei said with tears in her eyes. "Don't cry while eating." Lin Yu didn't look at Yu Weiwei and continued to eat. Yu Weiwei's culinary skills were pretty good. For Lin Yu, it could be considered an enjoyment in his spare time. Yes. Yu Weiwei stopped sobbing. Her life was miserable. Because she was ugly when she was young and already had a younger brother, she was abandoned. In the end, she was adopted by a family but lived a very poor life. Her adoptive parents didn't have any children and were old. Therefore, Yu Weiwei came to the Parting Heaven sect to work as a servant to support the family. Thinking of how she hadn't returned for 5 years, she wondered how her adoptive parents were doing. She couldn't help but feel sad. Lin Yu seemed to have seen through Yu Weiwei's thoughts. "This is the face sculpting pill. It can restore your looks, and you won't have to feel inferior in the future," Lin Yu said and handed over a foundation building pill. Yu Weiwei's foundation wasn't very good. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been chosen by the Parting Heaven sect to enter the chores yard. After dinner, Lin Yu entered the cave and meditated. Yu Weiwei looked at the 2 pills in her hands in a daze. She was so grateful that she almost shed tears and didn't know what to say. Gradually, the sun set. The Parting Heaven sect, which was surrounded by clouds, was covered with a layer of red halo. It looked sacred the next day. Yu Weiwei woke up early and prepared a meal for Lin Yu. After taking the face sculpting pill, Yu Weiwei's hunchback had recovered and the pockmarks on her face were no longer there. She was slender and elegant. She had bright eyes and white teeth. She was tall and slender with a slim waist. Even the clothes of the chores couldn't hide her charm. However, she still had a sense of unfamiliarity. It was as if she wasn't used to her current appearance. Yu Weiwei's foundation was very good. It was just that the pockmarks and hunchback had covered up everything. "Not bad." Lin Yu nodded. "Mr. Lin, now I." Yu Weiwei couldn't help but lower her head and blush at Lin Yu's praise. "Thank you, Mr. Lin, for your kindness. I will never forget it." Yu Weiwei immediately knelt on the ground. "It's nothing. I'm hungry," Lin Yu said. "I'll bring the food up immediately." Yu Weiwei stood up and went to prepare the food. But at this moment, a hearty laugh came from outside Lin Yu's cave. "Master Lin, you're awake." It was Chen Shu. Behind him was a pretty girl. He smiled and looked at Lin Yu. Chapter 14-15. "Take a seat and eat," Lin Yu said. He sipped a mouthful of tea on his own. Yu Weiwei brought out the last dish. When she saw Chen Shu and the pretty lady, she bowed. She immediately bowed and said, "Greetings, elder, greetings, senior sister." "Good." Chen Shu smiled. "Since that's the case, Master Lin, don't blame us for disturbing you." With that, Chen Shu sat down. Yu Weiwei and the pretty lady did not take their seat. Their statuses were too low in front of Chen Shu. Seniority was a must. The pretty woman looked at the well-behaved Yu Weiwei with hostility on her face. This was a woman's sixth sense. Especially when she saw Yu Weiwei's face and figure, she felt a sense of danger. After receiving Lin Yu's face sculpting pill, although she had already taken it, her skin was so delicate that it could be broken by the wind. That exposed dress could hardly hide the proud scenery underneath. Chen Shu came to ask Lin Yu about the path of alchemy. She also brought information about the herbs Lin Yu needed for Lin Yu. After the meal, Chen Shu took her leave. "I also have some questions about cultivation that I would like to ask Senior," the pretty lady said through gritted teeth. Her face was red as if she had used up a lot of courage to say this. Now, everyone knew that Lin Yu was the successor of the Great Elder. Although the Great Elder did not announce it, the fact that he had the token was the best proof. The pretty girl came up to Lin Yu and said, "I hope eldest senior brother." Lin Yu nodded. "I'll give you 15 minutes. Lin Yu did not have that much time to deal with other things. "Thank you, eldest senior brother," the pretty girl said. Chen Shu looked at them, nodded, and left. The pretty lady was called Jing Yu. She had a high status, and was the granddaughter of the Grand Elder of the Sky Leaving Sect. She was doted on by everyone. It was only because she wanted to gain experience that she entered the inner sect. She had countless suitors. Eldest senior brother, do you believe in love at first sight? Jing Yu asked seriously during the process of asking for guidance. Lin Yu glanced at Jing Yu and said, "My path is not here. Give up on this idea as soon as possible." He rejected Jing Yu directly. At the same time, he thought of Goddess Yuqing and the others. He wondered how the 12 universes were doing now. He did not know how long he had been gone. Therefore, he did not know if the final black calamity was approaching. Jing Yu's eyes were filled with sadness. Crying, he ran out of Jing Yu's cave. The Lin Yu stood outside the cave, looking at the clouds and mist, and sighed deeply. This world was, after all, unfamiliar. He wanted to return to the universe as soon as possible. 2 days later, Lin Yu had refined the pill and was now on the 3rd step. The herbs were collected. Lin Yu was ready to refine the next stage of the elixir. Jing Yu was not in the alchemy room. Calm. Lin Yu left after refining the elixir. Chen Shu had been taking notes seriously, as if he was Lin Yu's disciple. During the time Lin Yu was in the alchemy room, he had a deeper understanding of Lin Yu. Lin Yu's attainment in alchemy was terrifying. Among all the people he had never seen someone like Lin Yu. This person is definitely a dragon among men. I'm afraid that even the Sky Leaving Sect will not be able to stop his growth, Chen Shu said. He thought of the Grand Elder's approach and agreed wholeheartedly. Lin Yu was in the process of returning to the cave. A man with sharp eyebrows and bright eyes blocked Lin Yu's path. His body had a power that made people's hearts palpitate. It was as if the clouds and mist here were constantly dissipating with his gaze. If one were to look carefully, one would notice that his appearance was somewhat similar to Jing Yu's. Lin Yu sighed softly. "Are you the eldest senior brother of the outer sect, Lin Yu?" the man asked coldly. "Yes," Lin Yu replied indifferently. "What did you do to my sister yesterday?" the man asked. Jing Yu was the youngest sister in their bloodline. She had been doted on since she was a child. After being wronged by Lin Yu, her brother Zheng Li went to look for Lin Yu to ask for an explanation. Lin Yu said helplessly, "You can ask your sister. I have something else to do." He didn't eat or drink after returning to my place. He just cried. "Did you bully him?" Zheng Li did not use his 4th step cultivation to bully others. "Now, as your elder brother, I'm here to seek justice from you," Zheng Li said. "You should be glad that it's like this," Lin Yu said. If Zheng Li had used his power to bully others and struck out at Lin Yu, he would have been a dead man by now. "You're arrogant. I know that even though you've killed Wang Yu, do you think that you stand a chance against me?" Zheng Li said. An hour passed. Zheng Li's face was bruised and swollen as he left the place. His eyes were filled with hatred. This attracted the curiosity of the outer sect and inner sect disciples. Zheng Li was a genius of the inner sect of the Blazing Sky sect. He was the core of the sect. He would definitely have a place in the upper echelons in the future. However, he could not last more than 3 rounds against Lin Yu. And this was because Lin Yu had held back. Otherwise, Zheng Li's face would not have been as simple as being bruised. Lin Yu returned to his cave abode. However, there was a piece of news that was spreading through the entire outer sect and inner sect. The eldest senior brother of the outer sect had beaten up his brother-in-law. Zheng Li, who was prepared to go into seclusion, found the person who had spread the news and gave him a good thrashing. It was only then that the news was suppressed. However, in the eyes of some people, the relationship between the two of them was confirmed. Lin Yu did not pay much attention to these things. Other than cultivating, he would head to the pill cultivation room to cultivate the pills that he needed for his breakthrough. In the blink of an eye, half a year passed. By now, Lin Yu had reached the pinnacle of the 5th step. Right now, there were no longer any medicinal herbs that were useful to him in the pill cultivation room of the outer sect. These medicinal herbs were extremely valuable. Even the entire inner sect did not have them. However, he found out from Qinshu. Thousands of miles away from the Blazing Sky sect was the outer perimeter of the ruins. Due to the beast stampede a few years back, the sect had suppressed it. Right now, the horrifying beasts within were almost all dormant. The Blazing Sky sect had joined forces with the other 3 sects of Chu country to enter and plunder the treasures of the outer perimeter. Lin Yu received the news. Right now, within the sect, there were no longer any treasures that could support him in leveling up. It's pretty good to enter that place. Lin Yu sat cross-legged within his cave and muttered. The aura of the pinnacle of the 5th step emanated from his body. In the past half a year, he had leveled up rapidly. To a large extent, this was due to the cultivation technique that the first elder had imparted to him. Lin Yu knew that this cultivation technique was definitely left behind by a powerful being who was at least at the 9th step back then. In other words, it was left behind by a powerful being of the original God realm. For the current Lin Yu, it was extremely useful. Even though the cultivation technique within was obscure, it wasn't much of a problem for Lin Yu. After all, he had long been comprehending it. Tao Induction Scripture. A hazy golden glow appeared on Lin Yu's body. This was the name of the cultivation scripture, bringing with it an endless amount of mysteries. Even though it was incomplete, Lin Yu could feel his heart skip a beat. The Tao Induction Scripture was extremely mysterious. If Lin Yu's cultivation realm had not dropped and he was still at the half-step utmost being level, he might have had some value in comprehending it. According to the first elder, the complete Tao Induction Scripture was once lost in a forbidden ground. Perhaps there might be a chance to retrieve it, Lin Yu said. Right now, the Blazing Sky sect no longer had any value. However, the first elder had a knot in his heart. It was the 2 people that Lin Yu had met when he arrived in this world. Bringing the 2 of them out can be considered as resolving the karma between me and the first elder, Lin Yu thought. Chapter 14:16. Lin Yu bade farewell to the first elder and left some instructions to Yu Weiwei. He then walked out of the Heaven Parting sect and stepped through the gate, arriving at the Forbidden Grounds. Looking at the deathly silent Forbidden Grounds, Lin Yu's heart was filled with emotions. Back then, he had been in a deep slumber here for who knew how long. He looked into the depths of the Forbidden Grounds. There seemed to be a mysterious power that was calling out to him. However, there was also a power that caused his heart to palpitate. Seems like I can't step into the Forbidden Grounds right now, Lin Yu said. Even though he had grasped the true intent of reincarnation, it was still dormant in the depths of his body. It was hard to use it. However, it was just a remnant of power that could resist the power outside the Forbidden Grounds. At this moment, there were already some major powers of Chu that had entered the Forbidden Grounds. Outside the Forbidden Grounds, there were also many sects that had set up camp. One could see the strange beasts that they had reared. They were creeping around the perimeter of the Forbidden Grounds, on high alert. These strange beasts were born with the ability to sense danger. They were all brought here by the major sects in case of emergencies. Lin Yu saw the position of the Heaven Parting sect. However, he did not go near. The Heaven Parting sect was led by the master of Wang Yu of the inner sect. The rest were elders and disciples of the inner sect. Their eyes were filled with pride. The Heaven Parting sect was strong. In Chu, they seemed to be the leader. When the other powers saw them, they were all respectful and did not dare to offend them. However, there was an indescribable killing intent in their eyes right now. Lin Yu thought of the man and woman in the Forbidden Grounds. Back then, Lin Yu had vaguely heard that the 2 of them were hunted down by the Heaven Parting sect and were forced to enter the Forbidden Grounds in search of a chance to survive. Seems like the Heaven Parting sect isn't very peaceful, Lin Yu said. However, He was already at the pinnacle of the 5th step. In the entire Chu country, he was an invincible existence. Coupled with his current methods, Lin Yu could even kill the strongest person in Chu country, who was only at the 6th step. In Chu country, he was not afraid of anyone. Even if a 7th step expert came here, Lin Yu would not be invincible if he used the space-time superposition of the King of Gods badge. Previously, Lin Yu had already tried it. The Tao law here was more primitive, but the space-time Tao law, as one of the most powerful Tao laws in the universe, could still be used. The King of Gods insignia was not suppressed in this world. Lin Yu had already arrived at the periphery of the forbidden area. Right now, these people were still discussing how to enter. The people from before were just probing the area, and they had already learned that there was no danger. Right now, in the Palace of Blazing Sky sect, Wang Yu's master was sitting on the seat of honor. He said slowly, "If you guys enter and see Qin Sheng and the other traitors, kill them without mercy. I will speak to the great elder of the outer sect." Killing intent could be seen in his eyes. This was clearly the intention of someone in the upper echelon of the Heaven Parting sect. Some people did not want Qin Sheng, the son of the great elder, to return to the Heaven Parting sect. This was a battle between the various branches of the Heaven Parting sect. Lin Yu was outside and concealed his body. He could hear everything clearly. He did not care about these things. The great elder had imparted the Tao induction scripture to him. This was a karma that he had to settle personally. As for Qin Sheng, since he was the son of the great elder, Lin Yu could just bring him back. However, the dangers of the forbidden area were unknown. Although Lin Yu could resist against the faint reincarnation intent, he could not help it. Since there were people probing ahead, it was naturally good. The various sects then held a meeting. Each sect sent out 2 elders to head into the depths of the forbidden area with their disciples. They were determined to obtain the blessings of the forbidden area. At the same time, this was a trial for the disciples. The strange beasts led the way. Everyone followed behind. The moment they stepped in, some of them began to age rapidly. At the same time, there were also some who gradually turned into babies. There was a mysterious power that was emanating from the depths of the forbidden area. Even though there was only a trace of it left at the periphery of the forbidden area, it was still difficult for them to resist. Some of them had already suffered. This included some of the strange beasts. Even though they had been nurtured by the bloodlines of the strange beasts in the forbidden area, they still could not withstand it. At this moment, they were screaming in fear. Lin Yu hid his aura and followed behind at a moderate pace. This is the aura of reincarnation. Everyone, be careful. The elders of Heaven Parting sect reminded. Immediately, they took out a broken ancient token. There was an ancient power on it that brought with it an unparalleled power. At this moment, it was actually able to resist the aura of this place. Lin Yu looked at the ancient token in the hands of the elders and felt a sense of familiarity. This seemed to be similar to the aura of the reincarnation road, but he did not know where it came from. Could it be that the reincarnation road exists in this world as well? Lin Yu could not help but guess. For the past few years, Lin Yu had been cultivating. Hence, he only had a rough understanding of this world. Hence, he did not look into the many secrets of this world. Seems like there are many secrets in this world as well, Lin Yu said. To the entire world, Chu country was just a small piece of land. To the entire world, it was just a drop in the ocean. It was insignificant. The vastness of this world was something that even Chu country had never recorded. However, Lin Yu had seen some ancient books and verified it with the first elder. This world was probably much bigger than a universe, but he did not know if this world was bigger or bigger than the origin ground. Lin Yu followed behind. But at this moment, he laughed coldly and said, "Heaven Parting sect has a good plan. Even that old bastard is here." Lin Yu's eyes were fixed on a young disciple. Although the young disciple had concealed his aura very well by using special techniques and tools, He was still unable to hide from Lin Yu, who had a powerful divine thought. That person was Wang Yu's master. But now, he had concealed his aura. He wanted to intercept many forces in the final opportunity to obtain the fortune. They all knew that in the depths of the forbidden area, there was an expert who came from the great world outside Chu country. He brought along a supreme scripture and died in the depths of the forbidden area. Now, their goal was to obtain the fortune left behind by that expert. Heaven Parting Sect had already received accurate information. Hence, they were very confident in this operation. Because of that, even Wang Yu's master had hidden his methods in the dark so that he could obtain the great fortune in the final battle. Lin Yu followed behind. He was not in a hurry to make a move. He had cultivated the scripture of Tao induction. Thus he could feel a faint attraction. He was sure that the Tao induction scripture was inside. However, it was still very far away. At least, he still had to cross a few mountains. There was a suppression in the forbidden area, so it was difficult for cultivators to fly. Now they could only walk. For safety reasons, the people here were very cautious. Hence, they moved very slowly. A few hours passed. There are indeed no strange beasts here. Someone began to let down his guard. At this moment, someone saw a 1,000-year-old treasure medicine and revealed a greedy look. "Don't move." At this moment, an elder reprimanded, but it was too late. Under the nourishment of the aura of reincarnation, the treasure medicine had a decaying aura. The moment that person touched it, a gray aura appeared all over his body. In the end, his body decayed and turned into powder that dissipated between heaven and earth. Chapter 14:17. The people around him suddenly felt their hair stand on end. They kept retreating, but there were still a few people who were a little slower. When they were touched by the gray powder of the corpses, their cheeks started to rot. His cheeks began to rot, and before long, his bones were gone. "Kill them!" An elder made a prompt decision and shot out a few bolts of light, killing them directly. Their corpses were rotting at a speed visible to the naked eye. Everyone's faces were filled with shock. "Don't be lucky in the forbidden area," the elder of Blazing Sky sect scolded. Everyone was on tenterhooks. They didn't care about the dead people and continued to move forward. In the face of death, they were all very careful. They tried to avoid some plants. However, no matter how careful they were, some people were still in trouble. They stepped on the hard-shelled insects and their bodies started to rot quickly, just like the people before them. This kind of trend was something that even an elder with great ability would have difficulty dispelling. In fact, an elder of a sect had even died because of it. Lin Yu followed behind. The reincarnation aura here didn't affect him much. 9-star grass. Lin Yu looked at the heaven and earth treasure. Without hesitation, he put it into his storage bag. The reincarnation aura was fatal to the cultivators in this world, but it was a rare nourishment for Lin Yu. Therefore, the aura of the herb couldn't hurt Lin Yu. After killing a few more insects, he put them into his storage bag. This was also the meaning behind the several main ingredients used to refine the breakthrough pill. Therefore, Lin Yu didn't let it go. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. At this moment, Lin Yu looked ahead and said slowly, "It's here." Just as Lin Yu finished speaking, a pangolin suddenly rushed out of the dense forest in front of them. It suddenly rushed out of the ground. No one had expected this. The strange beasts in front of them were instantly pierced. Under the pangolin's sharp mouth, the strange beasts were scared out of their wits and kept running away. However, they had been tamed and the seed of control was planted in the depths of their spiritual consciousness. "Come back!" Threads of divine sense appeared in the hands of the elders, summoning all of the wailing beasts back to them. This pangolin definitely had the strength of the sixth step. Moreover, the armor on it was shining with the light of runes. Perhaps even a sixth-step expert couldn't break its defense. Everyone furrowed their brows and retreated uncontrollably. Some disciples already had the idea of retreating because they felt the terrifying pressure. This is not a place for humans. After being suppressed for a long time, some disciples' spirits almost collapsed. More than 50% of the people around them. Don't be afraid. Everyone, use the weapon. The elder of the celestial parting sect took a step forward and a large umbrella appeared in his hand. It was overflowing with light and color, directly replacing the heaven and earth here. Under the red light's light was shining on the ground of the pangolin's light. As the elder of parting heaven's sect formed a hand seal, the pangolin was imprisoned. The foundation of the heaven departing sect is really unimaginable. I didn't expect that they would even bring out a magic weapon like the sky gauze umbrella. Some elders from other sects were shocked. However, how could they not have something to rely on when they came to the forbidden area? They all used the powerful weapons of their sects to kill the pangolin. The origin of these Dharma treasures was very ancient. They were all left behind by some powerful cultivators in the sect. They were all at least at the 7th step and already had a simple level of intelligence. At this moment, several weapons were suppressing the pangolin together. The blazing sky umbrella was mainly used to restrain the pangolin. Under the red light, the pangolin seemed to have fallen into a swamp and couldn't break free. Just like that, 2 hours passed. Everyone finally killed the pangolin with difficulty. Everyone let out a long sigh of relief. Clearly, killing such a creature had taken a huge toll on them. However, no one took the pangolin's body away. The creature in the forbidden area had been infected by the reincarnation chi and had a terrifying aura. Even if they brought it back to their sex, no one could refine it. Lin Yu took advantage of this. The pangolin was also one of the ingredients used to refine elixirs. It was especially so for a pangolin of this size. It had at least 1,000 years of cultivation, and its body was full of medicinal power. It was a rare ingredient for an alchemist. Lin Yu kept the pangolin's body. He looked at the people of the sects who had already left. Each of them had their own plans, and none of them were idle. At least when facing the pangolin, they wouldn't use any tricks unless someone died. In particular, some sects still had powerful tricks up their sleeve. None of this could escape Lin Yu's detection. However, Lin Yu was very happy to see these people fighting with each other. He could reap the benefits by sitting back and waiting. They were now deep in the forbidden area. Everyone looked in the same direction, and all of them revealed a look of shock. The reincarnation chi was so strong that it almost couldn't be dispersed. Could it be that this place is the cause of the beast stampede? An elder guessed at this moment. Only such a strong reincarnation chi could make people feel afraid. Even the strange beasts here were no exception. Do we need to get closer and investigate? Someone suggested at this moment. No need. Our purpose here is to find the remains of the strong. It's best not to provoke others. An elder of Blazing Sky sect said with a frown. I don't know what it is, but there's no doubt that it's horrifying. Otherwise, the strange beasts here wouldn't have escaped from the forbidden area. Someone continued. They didn't dare to go closer. Lin Yu stood at the back and looked at that place indifferently. This was the place where he had been sleeping for a long time. As he woke up, the true intent of reincarnation in his body exploded. This led to the things that happened later. I wonder where the two of them are now, Lin Yu said. He took a step forward and used the world's end near at hand. In an instant, he arrived at this place. Everything within a 1-mile radius was covered in a layer of gray. It was as if nothing could change. It had been like this since time immemorial. There were no time and space Tao laws here. There was only endless silence. The plants seemed to be frozen at the moment Lin Yu woke up. The two of them were no longer in this place. Lin Yu stood in the center. The reincarnation aura here entered his body. He absorbed all the remaining aura in the area. However, he didn't use the remaining true intent of reincarnation to break through his current realm. This was the power of his previous Tao fruit. Right now, he wanted to use the techniques here to break through to the highest realm. Then, he would merge his Tao fruit and reach the peak. This was extremely difficult for Lin Yu. However, he somehow ended up in this place. How could Lin Yu not gain anything? After Lin Yu absorbed the reincarnation aura here, the mighty power in his body disappeared in the blink of an eye. He returned to the appearance of an ordinary person. If the two of them aren't here. Lin Yu closed his eyes. The remaining reincarnation aura on his body turned into incense. He was using the power of the ancient characters to deduce the location of the two. Not long after, Lin Yu opened his eyes and looked into the depths of the forbidden area. I didn't expect the two of them to actually enter there, Lin Yu said slowly. They must have been coincidentally healed by Lin Yu when they entered this place. They must have possessed a bit of Lin Yu's aura. The reincarnation aura here couldn't affect them. That was why they could step into such a deep place. However, this was less troublesome for Lin Yu. That was also the destination of his trip. The ruins in front of them were already in sight. Lin Yu caught up with the others. After 2 months of trekking, they finally saw a basin in the distance. The basin wasn't formed naturally. It seemed that an unimaginable battle had taken place here. It caused the area within 100 miles to collapse. One must know that in the forbidden area, one's cultivation was suppressed everywhere. It was hard to imagine how powerful the people who had fought here back then were. As the group continued to get closer, they finally saw a skeleton in the center of the basin. It seemed to be some kind of powerful beast. Just the skull alone was comparable to a palace. Some kind of formation pattern was carved on the skull. Chapter 14:18. It should be here. The elder of the Parting Sky sect said slowly. His voice was filled with excitement. This place was once a relic left behind by a terrifying being that surpassed the entire Chu country. It happened 2,000 years ago. It had stayed in Chu country for a period of time before entering the Forbidden Grounds. They did not know the reason, but the few sects of Chu country had always been in awe of this place. If it were not for the help of the Western powers of Chu country during the Beast Tide a few years ago, the entire Chu country would have been turned into a slaughterhouse. Lin Yu was behind the crowd. Looking at the relic, he frowned slightly. He could feel a familiar yet inexplicable aura here. His unchanging state of mind was actually fluctuating at this moment. He was afraid of seeing the outcome in his heart. Even after 2,000 years, the soaring sword intent was still difficult to erase. Everyone was in awe. At this moment, they were heading towards the depths of the relic. The crowd stepped over the skull. They could see that the skull was not complete. On the top of the skull there was a broken sword. However, it was still rotten, and there was not a single drop of divine power seeping out. The crowd could not help but feel pity. This sword has probably surpassed the 7th step. An elder sighed. Because even though the divinity of the broken sword had already dissipated, they could still feel the sharp sword intent on it. It was as if it could cut down the sun, moon, and stars. No one wanted to take the broken sword down. Then, everyone stepped into the skull. The elders of the Parting Sky sect and the people of the other sects all took out the items they had brought out from their sections. The origin of these items was very mysterious. They had once entered a relic and spent a lot of manpower and resources to bring it out with great difficulty. The tokens in their hands were also left behind by this expert 2,000 years ago. This expert had once lived in Chu country for a period of time. Before entering the Forbidden Grounds, he had left behind a relic. There were 6 tokens in it. These were the credentials to enter this place. Lin Yu had unknowingly blended into the crowd. Then, a fog appeared in the area. When the crowd opened their eyes again, they had already arrived at the relic. Everywhere they looked, there was only ruins. He couldn't sense any signs of life. However, one could see that in this world, there seemed to be something unknown moving mechanically in the distance. Now that we've entered the ruins, What we get will depend on our own abilities. Let's split up here. Otherwise, if the distribution is uneven, it might cause a fight, someone from a sect suggested. They had made ample preparations and knew many secrets about this place. Therefore, he suggested that they split up. The sect was mainly on guard against the heaven-parting sect. The heaven-departing sect was very powerful. Who knew what other tricks they had up their sleeves? They didn't expect to be intercepted in the end. Therefore, as soon as this statement was made, several sects seconded it. The two elders of heaven-parting sect furrowed their brows. However, everyone had already suggested it. They couldn't say anything. Now, everyone had chosen a direction. As for what they would get in the end, it would all depend on their luck. The people from the various sects were all very shrewd. They all had some understanding of the ruins. He was confident that he could obtain some good fortune from this place. Therefore, after splitting up, they quickly headed in the same direction. At this moment, Wang Yu's master in heaven-parting sect said coldly, "Those sects are all old foxes. Now that they've split up, it seems like they're already on guard against us." After seeing everyone leave, Wang Yu's master still didn't reveal his identity for the sake of being cautious. His seniority was very high. Even the two elders had to address him as a senior. At this moment, he placed his hands behind his back and said, "However, we'll have to gather in the end. We'll take action then. This ruin has a huge connection with our heaven-parting sect. The good fortune inside belongs to our heaven-parting sect." After saying that, he hid among the disciples. The two elders were still leading the group. "There's still danger here. Don't let your guard down," the elder reminded. At this moment, a map had appeared in their hands at an unknown time. On the map, it accurately marked the center of the remnant. Lin Yu had already left the group. Although he wasn't familiar with the ruins, he could still deduce where the things he needed were through the origin ancient characters. He was moving forward quickly. There was still danger here. However, Lin Yu wasn't afraid. That was because he had already deduced it before this. The two people from a few years ago had also entered this place. Moreover, they hadn't died. Therefore, Lin Yu could follow the path that the two of them had taken and move forward safely. Moreover, the two of them seemed to know about this ruin. Therefore, their paths were correct and led to the deepest part. After spending a few days, Lin Yu avoided the ghost-like puppets and finally arrived at the deepest part. There was a huge palace in the center. It was made of stone and had an ancient feel to it. Lin Yu knew that this was definitely not made by that expert 2,000 years ago. It came from somewhere else. The aura of time that was emitted from it had already surpassed tens of thousands of years. It had an immortal and indestructible aura. However, it was unknown what it had experienced. This stone palace was still dilapidated. There was a large circular hole on the roof. It seemed to have been pierced by someone with a finger. There was an aura that Lin Yu was familiar with. The aura above the stone palace was very similar to the stone city in the realm sea. It seemed to be from the same body. Lin Yu didn't hesitate and directly stepped into it. Time flies. The aura here was completely different. There was a strange aura. Countless ghosts could be seen roaming about within it. They were wearing standard armor. Although it had long decayed, it still gave one a feeling of fear. These soldiers, Lin Yu was now certain. This should be the palace that the expert from back then had entered the depths of the Forbidden Land and brought out from there. The aura of reincarnation on it was very strong. Moreover, the appearance of the ghosts was somewhat similar to the Een soldiers that Lin Yu had seen before. What is the connection between this Forbidden Land and the Stone City? Lin Yu was now in doubt. Back then, he saw the souls of the Darkness Divine Official and the Great Sun Boundless Buddha. They had also entered the reincarnation road. Did they also come to this world? Lin Yu could only confirm this after he became stronger. The most important thing now was to obtain the Tao induction scripture. Now that he had reached a bottleneck, he lacked the follow-up scripture. That was why he was stagnant. The Tao induction scripture was very mysterious. Lin Yu needed to use this scripture to complete his path forward. Chapter 14:19. Lin Yu guessed that this Tao induction scripture might have been left behind by an utmost being of this world back then as well. This was just the first half of the scripture, and yet it was already this mysterious. The reason why Lin Yu could level up so quickly during this period of time was because of this Tao induction scripture. This scripture could remove the side effects of pills. It would allow one to level up rapidly without any period of fatigue. As Lin Yu continued moving forward, the environment around him changed once more. There was a forest of swords here. The peaks were all gigantic swords. Is this the mystic skill of that powerful being from back then? Lin Yu looked at the forest of swords and asked slowly. Seems like that powerful being from back then was at least at the 9th step. Lin Yu replied slowly. Lin Yu looked at the forest of swords indifferently. Even now, there was still a blazing sword while permeating the air. This was the mystic skill that the powerful being from back then had evolved. However, he could not escape the fate of being corroded by the will of reincarnation at the end of the day. He had fallen here, and could only evolve into this set of ruins for the future generations to obtain the legacy of this place. Lin Yu was filled with admiration. However, this also showed how strong the forbidden ground was. From the forest of swords, Lin Yu could tell that the will of reincarnation wasn't the only thing within. This didn't seem to be the main reason for the fall of that powerful being. There's another source of power that lies within the depths of the forbidden ground. Lin Yu was certain now. If that was the case, if Lin Yu wanted to enter, he would have to be at the 9th step at the very least. Towards the later stages, the progress of one's strength would be slower. If he didn't have any great transformations, Lin Yu did not know how long it would take for him to reach the 9th step if he were to cultivate according to the rules. Lin Yu estimated that if he wanted to recover his strength, he would have to be at the 8th step at the very least. At the thought of this, Lin Yu could consider leaving the Chu country after obtaining the Tao induction scripture. He could look for other strong places to obtain opportunities and transformations. As he continued moving forward, Lin Yu saw the bloodstains in front of him. The bloodstain had already dried up, but it was still very fresh. It was left behind not too long ago. The two of them also entered this place. However, he was injured for some unknown reason. Just as Lin Yu took a step forward, terrifying sword Qi appeared here. Although under the passage of time, it had been greatly worn down. However, it still carried a sharp aura, as if it could traverse the 9 heavens. Lin Yu saw his master's heroic spirit from the sword Qi. After drinking a cup of wine, even the heavens and the earth could be slashed. Lin Yu was affected by this state of mind. As he stretched out his finger, it turned into a sharp sword Qi. Lin Yu had once obtained the imperial sword art from Patriarch Lu. As his cultivation base continued to climb, he had been able to evolve this magical art. He could now emit sword Qi from within his body. Although this was not as profound as the sword energy. However, with Lin Yu's Tao induction scripture's 5th step strength, this sword Qi was easily dealt with. However, this was not the end, but the beginning. After Lin Yu dealt with the first sword Qi, the aura here also became more and more terrifying. Endless sword Qi turned into a storm and charged towards Lin Yu. This was the sword energy of annihilation. Under the 6th step, no one could stop it. Although Lin Yu's cultivation base was only at the 5th step, he was still unaffected by the sword Qi here. With his strength, he could even fight against someone at the 7th step. This sword Qi can't stop me, Lin Yu said indifferently. Endless sword Qi appeared on his body. Since the owner of this place was once an expert with the sword, there was no harm in using the same method to deal with it. The sword Qi of the void was constantly colliding, and at this moment there was a terrifying sound of metal clashing. In the end, Lin Yu used all his strength. The wind and clouds reversed. Boom! The sword chi swept out, and a strand of hair by Lin Yu's ear was cut off. However, the sword chi here had all disappeared. After all, the sword chi dissipated. Lin Yu stood on the spot and comprehended something in his heart. Through the sword chi here, he comprehended some things. The Dharma of this world was different from what Lin Yu had seen in the universe and the land of origin. It seemed that it did not need to rely on the Dharma laws of heaven and earth, but used one's own Dharma. One's own Dharma. Lin Yu also comprehended something from it. Sword Tao, reincarnation, great Tao. They are all a kind of Tao. Now that I'm using the reincarnation great Tao, the powerhouses here use their own Dharma. Lin Yu gradually understood. When was the great Tao born and when was it destroyed? If one's own Dharma, they would not be restrained by heaven and earth. Lin Yu began to examine himself. He had only completely mastered the reincarnation great Tao, but it did not belong to him. It belonged to heaven and earth. If heaven and earth were destroyed, wouldn't the source of his strength be severed? Thinking of this, Lin Yu thought that he had to completely refine his own great Tao into his body, or completely transform the reincarnation great Tao into his own Tao. After coming to this realization, Lin Yu's eyes became deep and profound. He continued to move forward. There was no danger at the back. This was a pure land. One could see that the jade grass was lush and the jade trees were jagged. There were two people sitting cross-legged inside. They were constantly comprehending, and the sound of chanting was coming from somewhere. Their expressions were calm and peaceful, as if they were in a deep state of Tao comprehension. However, as time passed, small beads of sweat gradually appeared on their faces. It seemed that they could not comprehend such a profound scripture. Now, their bodies were gradually turning illusory, as if they were about to turn into Tao. If this continued, they might die. And now, they were already deeply immersed in it and could not extricate themselves. Forget it, Lin Yu said indifferently. One of the purposes of his trip was to end the karma between him and the Grand Elder. Therefore, saving these two people was also one of the plans. Lin Yu stepped into this place and instantly understood. This grand chanting was talking about the Tao induction scripture. Lin Yu stood where he was. It didn't take long for the strange phenomena to surround him. Lin Yu's meridians and pores were moving rhythmically with the sound of the scripture. This was a complete scripture, unlike Lin Yu's incomplete scripture. The scripture's Tao laws were endless and profound, as if it was explaining Tao and logic. It was very profound. Even Lin Yu's insight was difficult to comprehend in a short period of time. After coming into contact with the complete scripture, Lin Yu was sure that this Tao induction scripture was definitely incomparably profound. It might have surpassed the utmost being. This made Lin Yu feel a wave of shock. Could there be an existence that has surpassed the utmost being in this world? Lin Yu was in disbelief. He did not continue to think about the next step, because if that was the case, then this world would be too terrifying. However, Lin Yu thought of another possibility, which was that this Tao induction scripture was not created by humans, but was born between heaven and earth. This was because the scripture was too profound. Even the current Lin Yu benefited greatly from the chanting of the scripture. He seemed to have a different kind of enlightenment. As time went by, the chanting of the scripture here gradually evolved into symbols and slowly imprinted into Lin Yu's sea of consciousness. A few symbols contained all kinds of changes. The complete scripture was obtained by Lin Yu. The jade grass and jade trees in this place were rapidly withering. At the same time, a stream of silk entered Lin Yu's sea of consciousness. This was left behind by that expert. It contained pure energy. A figure appeared in front of Lin Yu, Ancestor Lu. Lin Yu was all too familiar with this figure. In terms of temperament, they were almost exactly the same, but in terms of clothing, there was a difference. Seems like you came from the world behind the forbidden grounds. The figure that looked like Ancestor Lu said slowly. Chapter 1420. He seemed to know many secrets and could tell Lin Yu's current identity. Lin Yu looked calmly at the man who looked like Ancestor Lu and said, "You're not Ancestor Lu, but your aura and appearance are too similar." He didn't deny that he was someone from the forbidden area. The man who looked like Ancestor Lu had an indifferent look in his eyes as he said, "It seems that the prophecy of my previous life is about to come true. Someone from the forbidden area has arrived, and this world is about to be overturned." The man seemed to be immersed in his memories as he said, "But the timing seems to be wrong. No matter what, there's too much filth in this world, and it's time to clean it up." After saying that, his figure slowly dissipated. He didn't have any reservations about Lin Yu obtaining his technique, because he was an outsider. It seemed that he did it deliberately, or it was based on some kind of fate. The inheritance here had been waiting for Lin Yu's arrival. Lin Yu didn't understand what the man who looked like Ancestor Lu said. The world behind the Forbidden Lands. Could it be that this world was the true Great World? Lin Yu didn't think about it. Now that he had obtained the inheritance here, the pure power of the fruit of Tao was slowly fusing into Lin Yu's body. At this moment the two people also woke up. His face was very pale, as if he had experienced something very terrifying. But when they saw Lin Yu, they were shocked and immediately knelt on the ground, hurriedly saying, "Greetings, Senior." The pressure that Lin Yu had displayed that day still made the two of them feel a lingering fear. The woman's face was beautiful with a sense of elegance. At this moment, she also knelt on the ground respectfully. She didn't belong to the Chu country, but came from the more powerful ancient country of North Star. As the daughter of a marquis, she naturally knew how powerful Lin Yu was. She had never seen such an expert even when she participated in the national sacrificial ceremony. Even if Lin Yu was only at the 5th step now, his faintly discernible temperament could be felt. In particular, Lin Yu could easily resolve the crisis here. Although they didn't know if Lin Yu had obtained the fortune here, they did not dwell on it. They were afraid that Lin Yu had already seen through their thoughts. "There is no need to stand on ceremony. I am acquainted with the first elder of the Heaven Parting sect. One of my objectives for coming here today is to save all of you." Lin Yu spoke in a faint voice. Parting Heaven sect. The man fell into silence. Back then, they had been chased by a certain upper echelon of the Heaven Departing sect. In the end, they had no choice but to flee into this forbidden area. In the end, he risked his life to come here. If not for the fact that Lin Yu had recovered at that time and naturally emitted that mysterious power that healed the two of them, they would not have been able to escape. Most likely, they had already perished in the forbidden grounds, buried in the stomachs of the beasts. However, the two of them had also obtained great benefits. Especially on the man's body, there was a faintly discernible sword chi that seemed to be about to burst out. He had obtained part of the inheritance of the expert in the ruins and was now at the peak of the 5th step. He was already an expert in the Blazing Sky sect. "Senior, may I ask how my father is now?" the man asked. The father he was referring to was naturally the first elder. The man had been intelligent since he was young. When he was young, he had traveled the world. In the end, he left the Chu country and got to know a woman. However, on the way back to the Chu country, he was chased by a mysterious person. If not for the fact that the man had obtained many opportunities in the process of traveling and had a solid foundation in his strength, he would have met with disaster when he set foot in the Chu country. However, there was always a way out. It could be considered a coincidence that the man was able to survive. "Since you're alive, I'll bring you out. The Blazing Sky sect will not be able to do anything to you," Lin Yu said slowly. After obtaining the complete Tao induction scripture and the inheritance of the expert in the ruins, his cultivation base had naturally reached the 6th step. A wave of pressure formed. This caused the hearts of the two men to palpitate. Although Lin Yu was only a realm higher than them, they felt that it was different. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. It was as if they were separated by a chasm. They did not understand how such a difference could be formed. However, when they thought of the state that Lin Yu had shown when he was revived, they immediately understood. They guessed that Lin Yu's cultivation base was far beyond the 6th step. It was unknown how much higher it was. However, after entering the forbidden grounds, his foundation had been eroded, causing his cultivation base to fall. It was just that he was still in the process of recovering. However, after receiving Lin Yu's promise, the two of them became even more confident. The two men were filled with confidence. Clearly, there were people in the Blazing Sky sect who did not want him to return. Back then, the first elder was a strong contender for the position of the Blazing Sky sect's sect master. Now that the first elder's son, who was terrifyingly talented, had returned to the Blazing Sky sect, it would only affect one person. That would be the son of the sect master who was about to be appointed as the sect master's successor. The man understood in his heart. Now that his cultivation base had reached such a level, he knew that other than the sect master and those old monsters who had cultivated for many years, even some of the upper echelons of the Blazing Sky sect would not be a threat to him. It's a pity that I broke through too late. Otherwise, you wouldn't have suffered so much, the man said slowly to the woman beside him. As long as I can be with you, I'm not afraid of any suffering, the woman said. Their eyes were filled with deep love. After the injuries on their bodies had subsided. Senior, thank you for protecting us, the man stood up. Just as they were about to leave, a group of people walked out of the sword forest in front of them. It was the Blazing Sky sect. They had used the sky gauging umbrella to reach this place. The sky gauging umbrella, which was the sect's weapon, had a few big holes. Essence chi was leaking out and it was obviously severely damaged. Someone beat us to it. The elder's eyes narrowed. When he saw Lin Yu and the others, Master Wang Yu, who was hiding among the disciples, was also slightly surprised. He had never expected that there would be two of his enemies here. You are the son of Lin Yu and the great elder from the outer sect, the leading elder said in a serious tone. Lin Yu looked at the elders calmly. If you get out of the way now, you might still have a chance to live, Lin Yu said indifferently. They were all instructed by Master Wang Yu to come to the forbidden area to deal with the great elder's son. It could be said that those who came here were all the direct descendants of the sect master. In the face of Lin Yu's casual tone, the two elders couldn't help but laugh out loud. With a sinister look in their eyes, they said, "You're just an outer sect disciple. Do you think you can overturn the heavens?" Lin Yu's aura had been concealed. Therefore, they didn't know that Lin Yu's current cultivation was comparable to the sect master's. Master Wang Yu, who was hiding among the disciples, saw Lin Yu and the great elder's son, but he didn't rush to show himself. He was very cautious and wanted to know. He wanted to know if they had any hidden methods or if the great elder had given them any divine items. Do it. Master Wang Yu, who was at the peak of the 5th step, transmitted his voice at this time. The two elders didn't hesitate. Now that they were at the 5th step, the divine power on their bodies turned into torrential flames and directly attacked Lin Yu and the man. Puff, 2 streams of scarlet blood splattered. With a sinister look, the two elders' bodies fell to the ground. Unsurprisingly, the two elders at the 5th step were directly killed by Lin Yu. There was a bottleneck between the 5th and 6th step, and the gap was huge. Now that Lin Yu had reached the 6th step, he had mastered a supreme technique like the Tao induction scripture. The refinement of his cultivation had reached a shocking level. Chapter 14:21. Now, killing 2 5th-step cultivators was a piece of cake for him, and he could do it casually. At this moment, all of the surviving disciples who had followed him were shocked. They had all seen Lin Yu in the handyman selection. They clearly remembered that Lin Yu was only a 2nd-step cultivator a year ago. Although he had killed Wang Yu, who was a 3rd-step cultivator, it had shocked them greatly. But now, a fifth-step elder could not even withstand a single blow from Lin Yu. They could not imagine how terrifying Lin Yu's strength was now. At this moment, Lin Yu locked onto Wang Yu's master, who was hiding among the disciples. "Do you think you can escape today?" Lin Yu said indifferently. At this moment, Wang Yu's master, under the fearful gazes of the disciples, was continuously retreating. He did not expect Lin Yu's strength to be so terrifying in just a short period of time. He could kill cultivators of the same level as him with a raise of his hand. Even if he was at the peak of the fifth step, he would not be Lin Yu's opponent. He only had one thought now. Where there was life, there was hope. He could only return to the sect and ask the sect master to make a decision. But now that Lin Yu had seen through his identity, it would be difficult for him to escape. Lin Yu had locked onto him. It made Wang Yu's master's hair stand on end. "Do you want to be exterminated?" Wang Yu's master walked out and returned to his old appearance. The disciples opened up a path for him. But they did not know that Wang Yu's master, as the leader of the Blazing Heaven sect, had also hidden himself and entered here. Lin Yu looked at Wang Yu's master indifferently. "I want to know what crime we have committed. Why are we regarded as traitors?" The man stepped forward and questioned Wang Yu's master. He had just stepped into Chu country and was severely injured by a mysterious person. In the end, he was even accused by the Blazing Heaven sect. "You betrayed Blazing Heaven and joined forces with this demonic woman to kill the disciples of my sect. Isn't that enough?" Elder Wang Yu slowly said. His aura was very well hidden. Wang Yu's master wanted to activate the power of the gauze sky umbrella and activate the restrictions within. Even if it meant detonating the umbrella, he wanted to crush Lin Yu to pieces. He didn't know Lin Yu's current cultivation level, but he wanted to kill him with one strike. He couldn't hold back at all. Even if the gauging sky umbrella was the sect's most important weapon, it was worth it to kill the man and Lin Yu. The sky gauging umbrella carried a mighty force. At this moment, it appeared directly behind Wang Yu's master. "If you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext," Lin Yu said indifferently. "As long as you are strong, no one will dare to say anything." He didn't give Wang Yu's master the slightest chance and directly attacked. Before Wang Yu's master could activate the sky gauze umbrella, Zhang Xian tapped out with his finger. A burst of sword qi shot out, piercing through Wang Yu's head. The man was a little surprised by Lin Yu's methods. He didn't expect that Lin Yu would have mastered the sword qi that he had spent a few years comprehending. Moreover, it seemed to be even more profound. The man sighed in his heart. It was because his cultivation level wasn't high enough that it led to this situation. He let the great elder suffer the pain of losing his son alone in the outer sect. Lin Yu didn't kill too many of these disciples and let them leave. After returning to the outer sect, only the great elder and the man would go to Heaven Parting sect to seek an explanation. When the time came, the truth would be revealed. He was indebted to the great elder. Lin Yu thought that he could go to Heaven Parting sect and help the great elder. After all, the great elder had entered the ruins and was severely injured. His cultivation level had dropped. The man was only at the 5th step of cultivation. If they encountered the sect master, it would be difficult for them to wash away the injustice. "Let's go back to Heaven Parting sect. After I settle the last thing, I will leave," Lin Yu said to the man. Soon, the three of them walked out of the ruins. It was much faster to go back the way they came. It was just a few months' time. The three of them walked out of the forbidden grounds. They then approached Heaven Parting sect quickly. Amidst the swirling clouds, halfway up the mountain was the residence of the outer sect. The great elder seemed to have sensed something long ago. At this moment, he appeared at the entrance of the outer sect. "You're back." The great elder looked at the man who looked 70% similar to himself when he was young. His eyes were filled with gratification. "I'm sorry, father." The man's eyes were filled with tears as he knelt down on the ground immediately. "Greetings, father." The woman knelt down on the ground obediently. The great elder could naturally tell the relationship between his son and the woman. He didn't say much about his son finding a Tao companion. Now that he saw them return safely, the great elder was the happiest. It was Senior Linyu who saved us and brought us out of the ruins. If it wasn't for Senior Linyu, I'm afraid that both of us would have perished in there. The man said seriously. The great elder had long guessed Lin Yu's identity. However, due to his character, he had never asked too much. Thank you, the great elder said sincerely. He knew that Lin Yu's identity wasn't ordinary. Therefore, he didn't refer to himself as a senior and didn't address him as such. This is the karma between you and me, Lin Yu said slowly. The upper echelons have already locked onto this place. Why don't we go to the main hall today and clarify everything so that you guys can be cleared of this? Lin Yu continued. When he found out that his son was being hunted down by Heaven Parting sect, a rare killing intent appeared in the great elder's eyes. All of this originated from me and the sect master. Now, it's time to put an end to it. The grudges of the previous generation shouldn't extend to the next generation. The great elder looked at his son. Now that he had a Tao companion, it meant that he had something to worry about. The great elder didn't want them to continue putting themselves in danger. Since Father wants to seek justice for us, why should I be afraid? The man's eyes were filled with determination. He followed behind the great elder. The few of them arrived at the main hall. The main hall towered under the sky. It was the peak of the highest mountain in Heaven Parting sect. A grand hall stood on a large platform. The glazed tiles were overflowing with color and the cinnabar walls were enshrouded in red light. Every part of the hall was extraordinary. Those who came here couldn't help but feel a sense of solemnity in their hearts. Lin Yu had also come here. He was prepared to leave the Chu country after settling this last matter, to explore a wider world. Lin Yu didn't know how long he had been in this world. It had been 2 to 3 years since he'd awakened. Although 2 to 3 years was just the blink of an eye for an expert, it was incomparably precious to Lin Yu. He didn't know what had happened in the universe and the land of origin. Lin Yu wasn't there, so it was difficult to understand. Lin Yu didn't know whether the final black calamity had arrived. Therefore, he needed to return to the land of origin as soon as possible. However, there seemed to be something terrifying in the Forbidden Land that would block Lin Yu's path. To be on the safe side, Lin Yu needed to increase his cultivation. In the main hall, there were already a few people waiting for them. The leader was dressed in a green Tao robe and exuded a powerful aura. He had an indifferent temperament. He slowly turned his head with his hands behind his back and said, "Junior brother, long time no see. Senior brother, you know why I'm here today. There's no need to beat around the bush." Chapter 1422. Why do you want to kill me? The first elder questioned. This matter involved the fact that the first elder was severely injured and his cultivation realm had dropped. The first elder had never mentioned this to anyone else. However, the sect leader knew clearly the reason for the first elder's injury. This matter had a lot to do with him as well. That was the reason why the great elder said that he wanted to exterminate his bloodline. Because your lineage is too dishonest. The sect leader no longer hid anything as he said indifferently, "Back then, Master was prepared to pass down the position to you. Even though you were indifferent and disliked management, how could I not be jealous? I'm afraid that if I hadn't used some tricks in the ruins to destroy your foundation, I wouldn't have been the sect leader by now." The sect leader continued. "Let's not talk about the fact that you injured me. However, you have to give an explanation to my son for being so overbearing." The first elder became extremely domineering. "With the cultivation realm that you crippled?" The sect leader looked at the first elder coldly. Now that things had come to this, it wasn't something that could be resolved with words. At this moment the man stood out. There was a sharp fighting spirit in his eyes. First Elder, are you going to make a move? Lin Yu asked indifferently. Let me give it a try and see what realm my senior brother has reached. The First Elder said indifferently. His cultivation realm started to emanate from his body. Lin Yu nodded his head. He didn't interfere too much. This was because he knew that even though the Tao induction scripture that the First Elder cultivated was incomplete, his cultivation realm had dropped and he was only at the 5th step. However, it wasn't impossible for him to fight someone of a higher realm. Furthermore, the First Elder had been at the 5th step for many years. Now, he couldn't be measured by the usual 5th step. Right now, Lin Yu was looking at a man who was hidden in a black robe in the main hall. His eyes narrowed slightly. This man's cultivation realm seemed to have surpassed the 6th step and was at the 7th step. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be such a powerful person in the heaven-departing sect. The First Elder's aura wasn't any weaker than the sect leader's. At this moment, the two of them had already collided. The man had also encountered the youngest son of the sect leader. This was the hatred of a single bloodline. Lin Yu stared at the black-robed man. If he were to make a move, the First Elder and his son would have no chance of winning. Lin Yu's aura locked onto the black-robed man. How can a cultivator of the 6th step sense me? That person's lips curled up in curiosity. With a thought, he appeared right in front of Lin Yu. Then, the withered hand reached out. Bang! The sound of intense collisions formed layers upon layers of air waves. The sandalwood tables and chairs in the main hall were shattered inch by inch, turning into powder. Lin Yu and the black-robed man both retreated 20 feet. It could be clearly seen that the black-robed man's arm spasmed for a moment. At the same time, there was a trace of shock in his eyes that were covered. He did not expect that a 6th-step cultivator would have such terrifying physical strength. Kid, you have quite the background. The black-robed man slowly opened his mouth. Even though he was defeated in the first exchange, his curiosity about Lin Yu grew stronger. You're not bad yourself, Lin Yu said slowly. In the first exchange, Lin Yu was already certain that this person was not from Chu. His gaze had stopped on the woman, which meant that he might be from the North Star ancient nation. A 7th-step cultivator had personally come to Chu. The woman's identity might be special. You're here to find her. I advise you not to interfere with the matters here, Lin Yu said calmly. He was not threatening, but simply informing the black-robed man. If the black-robed man wanted to make a move, Lin Yu did not mind killing him. You think you can kill me? The black-robed man's interest was piqued and he was curious. You can try, Lin Yu said again. His eyes remained calm the entire time. A 7th-step cultivator was not an invincible existence to Lin Yu. Even if he did not use the power of the king's token, Lin Yu could still kill him. However, the black-robed man also realized that Lin Yu's words were not a joke. Therefore, he did not continue to make a move. He was only here for the woman. Therefore, he did not pay much attention to the internal strife of the sky-leaving sect. I did not expect that there would be such a young cultivator in the sky-leaving sect. This is really unexpected. Seems like the day when the sky-leaving sect unifies Chu is not far away, the black-robed man said slowly. You flatter me, Lin Yu replied. He did not have any deep hatred for the black-robed man. Therefore, there was no need for him to fight to the death. The two of them stood calmly on the spot, watching the two battles. With a thought, Lin Yu's eyes flashed with a terrifying sword light. As the sword light flashed, a person who was trying to harm the First Elder was sliced in half at the waist. Instantly, his aura was cut off. This scene scared the rest of the people in the hall. No one dared to act rashly in the face of such a terrifying aura. Looking at your methods, you don't seem to be from the orthodox sky-leaving sect, the black-robed man said again. However, at this moment, he seemed to have received some information. Hidden under the black robe, his face turned serious. When he looked at Lin Yu again, his eyes seemed to be different. Lin Yu could also feel this change. However, Lin Yu did not know why this was the case. The battle was still ongoing. A restriction appeared in the main hall, protecting it from being damaged. Lin Yu could now sense that there was a pure and powerful aura leaking out from a secret place in Blazing Heaven sect. The old monster of the sky leaving sect has awakened, the black-robed man said slowly. He did not seem to be old. Therefore, he had a playful heart. At this moment, facing the awakening of the old monster of the sky leaving sect, he was not afraid at all. Instead, he was looking forward to it. Indeed, there is such a powerful person in the sky leaving sect, Lin Yu said in a low voice. This was definitely a seventh-step powerful person. Moreover, he had a deep foundation in the seventh step. Even Lin Yu would have trouble dealing with him now. I hope that you will not side with anyone, Lin Yu said calmly. At this moment, a decaying figure had appeared in the main hall without anyone noticing. It was a gray-robed man. His face was full of wrinkles like dried tree bark. As he moved, his wrinkles could fall off. In his turbid eyes, he could not see anything. However, when the aura from his body was released, the figures of the first elder and the others were restrained and fell to the ground. We are all from the sky leaving sect. Why are you killing us? His hoarse voice rang out slowly. The frightening oppressive might caused even the first elder and the headmaster to be unable to withstand it. Old ancestor, I will wait. The sect master wanted to speak. I did not ask you to speak. The old man's words shut the sect master up. As he closed his eyes, he saw a middle-aged man with a sword in his arms walk up to the old man and tell him everything. As the sect master, instead of thinking about how to strengthen the sect, you are thinking about internal friction. Your sect will face the wall for 500 years, the old ancestor said directly. As the first elder of the outer sect and my disciple's grandson, if you do not respect him, how can the sky leaving sect set the rule? Face the wall for 10 years. The old ancestor looked at the first elder. Old ancestor, this. The sect master wanted to speak. The difference between 500 years and 10 years was too big. The sect master could not accept it. Chapter 1423. He wasn't being biased. The ancestor of Blazing Sky sect already knew what had happened to the first elder. However, he didn't expect the sect master's descendants to want to kill them all. Don't you know what you have done? 500 years is considered too little. The ancestor said. The sect master of Blazing Sky sect will be managed by the first elder's son. We will talk about the rest after 500 years. The ancestor said flatly. In the end, the sect master was stripped of his crown and his face was filled with sadness. He knew that after 500 years, no one in Blazing Sky sect would recognize him. This was equivalent to stripping him of his position as the sect master. However, now that the ancestor had come out of seclusion, no one dared to disobey his orders. Lin Yu looked on indifferently from the beginning to the end, until everything calmed down. The ancestor of Blazing Sky sect finally noticed the black-robed man and Lin Yu. In his eyes, there was an almost imperceptible movement. He could tell that Lin Yu and the black-robed man weren't simple people. I originally came here to bring back the princess of the North Star ancient country. However, I no longer have that intention. The black-robed man revealed his background. When the ancestor of Blazing Sky sect heard the black-robed man's background, he couldn't help but feel his heart palpitate. However, he was the ancestor of a sect after all. His mental state was terrifying and he quickly recovered. So it's an expert from the North Star ancient country. Please take a seat. The ancestor waved his sleeves and the tables and chairs returned to their original state. He ordered the man who was carrying a sword beside him to pour tea for each of them. After a short moment of understanding, The ancestor of Blazing Sky sect found out that the woman brought back by the first elder's son was the eldest daughter of a marquis in the North Star ancient country. The two of them loved each other and decided to return to Blazing Sky sect. However, they didn't want to be surrounded and killed. Fortunately, the princess is fine. Otherwise, even 10 Blazing Sky sects would be destroyed. The black-robed man said calmly. That wasn't all. The North Star ancient country had an unimaginable amount of territory and ruled over countless living beings. It was one of the strongest ancient countries in the East. The Marquis ruled over a region, and there were countless experts under him. This seventh-step expert's cultivation was not considered top-notch in the Marquis fiefdom. He was ordered to come here to pass on the news of Fu Wang Ho. Eldest princess, the Marquis said that if you have made up your mind, he will not stop you. He only hopes that you can go back and spend time with your parents when you are free, the black-robed man said slowly to the girl after drinking the tea. Got it. The woman's eyes were filled with tears. Her love with a man was stopped by the entire vassal state, and in the end, she was forced to elope. Also, if you're bullied again, he won't spare that brat, the black-robed man continued. The patriarch of the Parting Sky sect laughed and said, Envoy, you don't have to worry about this. Even if the eldest princess is wronged here, I will not let this brat off. The old ancestor of Parting Heaven's sect patted his chest and guaranteed. This could be considered a marriage alliance. This also meant that his Blazing Sky sect was now closely related to the Fu nation of the Gauchan ancient nation. This would undoubtedly raise the status of the Parting Heavens sect to another level. With the support of the vassal states, the Parting Heavens sect would definitely develop rapidly again. The patriarch of the Parting Sky sect looked at the first elder's son with gratification. In the end, the first elder would not have to face the wall. Immediately bring the betrothal gifts and go to the Gauchan ancient nation. Since the eldest princess is married here, she cannot be wronged. The patriarch of the Parting Sky sect made a prompt decision. He ordered people to prepare many divine items. He also personally wrote the letter of engagement. No one said anything about the relationship between the two of them. They had experienced life and death along the way and were already unswerving in their loyalty. Now that they had obtained the permission of the girl's father, it was the best thing for them. No matter how this marriage would affect the Parting Sky sect, the man had to marry the girl. I am only responsible for passing the message. As for when you will go, it has nothing to do with me, the black-robed man said. Envoy, don't you want to stay for a few more days? The patriarch of the Parting Sky sect asked. The black-robed man waved his hand and said, Wu is not considered a subordinate of the Fu Marquis. I am just doing it in passing. With that, he turned to leave. However, he quickly turned his head to look at Lin Yu and said, I wonder if this little fellow cultivator is willing to leave with me? The black-robed man invited him. Sure, Lin Yu nodded his head. Although he had exchanged blows with the black-robed man earlier on, it was just a casual test. Now that Lin Yu needed to go to a wider world, he would inevitably need the help of the black-robed man to understand the Gauchan ancient nation. Therefore, Lin Yu did not reject. When the great elder saw that Lin Yu was about to leave, he did not say anything. The Parting Sky sect could not keep Lin Yu in the first place. He had a wider world. Before long, the news of Lin Yu's departure spread throughout the outer yard and inner yard. Lin Yu had only been here for a short year. However, he had left behind an endless legend in the Parting Sky sect. It would probably be difficult to break this legend in the endless years to come. Lin Yu brought the black-robed man to his residence in the outer yard. Although Lin Yu's state of mind was usually very calm and indifferent, however, he was a person who valued relationship. Yu Weiwei, who was in the cave, had fallen asleep on the table while waiting for Lin Yu. He did not disturb Yu Weiwei. Instead, he left behind a few elixirs. There was no lack of grade 4 elixirs, which were enough for Yu Weiwei to enter the inner sect. Lin Yu and the black-robed man were ready to leave. At this moment, Zheng Yu caught up with him. Her eyes were filled with tears as she asked, "Are you really going to leave?" There was a glimmer of hope in her eyes. She hoped that Lin Yu would change his mind. However, Lin Yu's current plan was obviously not about romance. He naturally knew what Zheng Yu was thinking about him. Lin Yu nodded his head and dispelled Zheng Yu's fantasy. "Then, are you still coming back?" Zheng Yu was hopeful. "I'm not coming back," Lin Yu replied indifferently. If there was a chance, he might go to the depths of the Forbidden Grounds to find a way to return after he had completely recovered his cultivation in the Gaochen ancient nation. Zheng Yu was stunned on the spot. "You deserve someone better," Lin Yu said and disappeared with the black-robed man. Zheng Yu squatted on the ground and cried for a long time. Lin Yu and the black-robed man arrived at the border between Chu country and the Gaochen ancient nation in half a month. There was a wide river here. Legend had it that it was formed by the meridians of an immortal after he died. The river water was the immortal's blood. There was a strange power on the river that made it difficult for cultivators to fly. They could only cross it with the help of boat. When Lin Yu and the black-robed man arrived, it was the middle of winter and snow was falling. Soon, the entire world was covered in silver and there was a sense of emptiness. An old man in a straw raincoat was rowing a boat. He came to the two of them and said with a smile, "Do you two need to cross the river?" "Yes," the black-robed man said. He took out a few golden leaves and handed them to the old man. The old man looked at the golden leaves and said happily, "Brothers, please board the boat." The moment Lin Yu stepped onto the boat, an inexplicable sense of melancholy surged in his heart. He seemed to have been here before. Or rather, he was familiar with the boat. "Is the future irreversible?" Lin Yu muttered softly. The boat swayed. The old man was very experienced. He had made a living by carrying people across rivers. Chapter 1424. The surface of the river was vast and the snow danced in the air. There was a sense of vastness in the world. "What's on your mind?" The black-robed man was meticulous. He looked at Lin Yu and asked with a smile. The black-robed man had yet to reveal his true appearance. There seemed to be a mist around him. It was a special Dharma artifact that could hide his face. "I just felt something when I looked at the vast river," Lin Yu said. At this moment, he had already collected his thoughts and said calmly, "I'm sure you've already guessed my identity." Lin Yu looked at the black-robed man. Lin Yu already knew a thing or two from the black-robed man's reaction in the main hall of the Litian sect not long ago. Some things and words have become taboo in this era, so it's not convenient to talk about it in detail. "Although I'm not sure, I'm 70% sure about your identity," the black-robed man said directly without hiding anything. He had already guessed that Lin Yu was not from this world. Since he did not attack Lin Yu, he must have other considerations. Lin Yu's divine will was probably above the 8th step. He did not sense any malice from the black-robed man. In other words, the black-robed man and the forces behind him did not have any malice towards him. Lin Yu did not know why. However, Lin Yu only wanted to recover his strength as soon as possible. As for other things, he did not need to think too much. "You're smarter than I thought," the black-robed man said slowly. Lin Yu did not answer. "Are you willing to join the God's Court organization?" The black-robed man directly threw out an olive branch. "What can I get?" Lin Yu asked. This was what he was concerned about. What can you get? Divine objects, information, history, etc. You can get everything you want, but you need to make corresponding contributions, the black-robed man said. Okay. Lin Yu did not hesitate. After a short consideration, he agreed directly. The black-robed man was stunned by Lin Yu's straightforward answer. Aren't you afraid of being restrained? The man in black was puzzled. Aren't you also not bound? Lin Yu said calmly. These black-robed men were also members of the Divine Court. There were no restrictions or other negative things on them, so Lin Yu could also draw a conclusion. The Divine Court didn't have many restrictions on one person. But if you join the Divine Court, it means that you will become the enemy of the entire world. There will be no force or person in the world that can accept you, said the black-robed man. It's okay, Lin Yu said calmly. Can the Divine Court help me advance quickly? Of course. The black-robed man said, the Divine Court has existed for countless years and has an endless foundation. Otherwise, it wouldn't have survived the encirclement of many terrifying forces in the later generations and still exists today. That is to say, although the Divine Court has a majestic name, it does some shady business. Lin Yu said. Do you want to go back on your word now? The black-robed man looked at Lin Yu. However, Lin Yu raised his head. He didn't think that he was a righteous person who would do anything to achieve his goals. It was just some shady business. For Lin Yu, there was nothing to be afraid of or disgusted with. The Divine Court is an assassin organization that specializes in hunting experts. The black-robed man finally said, when the time comes, the Divine Court will arrange suitable missions for you based on the information. Lin Yu took the token given by the black-robed man. As for the clothes and other things, he would have to go to the Fuzhou Principality to get them from the stronghold there. You can use your contribution points to exchange for everything you need, the black-robed man explained to Lin Yu. Joining the Divine Court didn't mean that one could get divine objects at will, but that one needed to make contributions. Lin Yu wasn't surprised by this. In the distant and unknown void, there was a palace stained with the blood of some unknown creature. After hundreds of millions of years, it still hadn't dried up. There were also a few powerful corpses hanging in it. Their blood had been drained, and they looked very ferocious. What was certain was that the people who were killed were probably at the 10th step. The person called Lin Yu has already joined the Divine Court. At this moment, a person was sitting under the throne in the main hall. There were a few people beside him. Their eyes were strange. No one was sitting on the throne. It seemed that it had been empty for a long time. For countless years, the Divine Court had no leader. There were only agents. The people under the throne were the temporary agents of the Divine Court. They all had incomparably powerful auras. As they spoke, it was like a decree that could cause the void to be destroyed. If it weren't for the fact that this place was in the depths of the void, even if a few people gathered together, it would cause a terrifying phenomenon. Even the void would collapse. We've waited for who knows how long. An old man with disheveled hair said with a sigh. One could see that half of his body had already rotted. Half of his face was white bones, and the other half was flesh and blood. He looked very ferocious. It was hard to imagine that a creature could survive in such a state. The aura on his body was still blazing. It's still unknown whether it's him or not. Let's wait and see, someone said. But his heart doesn't seem to be here. He wants to go to the world behind the forbidden grounds, someone said. Take out the cage. The sinner inside isn't completely dead yet, another person said. Obviously, they knew a lot of secrets and were discussing at this moment. Every sentence was enough to shock the world. They knew too much. Back then, someone entered that place. Now that it has been exposed, I'm afraid it won't be long before someone goes to the other side of the forbidden grounds in order to trace the reincarnation, someone continued. At the mention of this, their faces were filled with grave expressions. However, their conversation was very secretive. After the conversation, the person who was left here was directly obliterated, leaving no trace of his existence. It was as if he had never been here. Lin Yu naturally didn't know about this. He was talking to the black-robed man, wanting to have a deeper understanding of the celestial court. In response to this, the old man who was rowing the boat stood at the bow and sensibly didn't listen. Instead, he was singing an unknown fisherman's song. He was just an ordinary person. He had heard a lot of the conversation between Lin Yu and the others during this period of time. Therefore, he knew that the conversations of ordinary cultivators involved secret. If he could not stop, he would try his best not to. However, during the conversation between the two, there was a deep meaning in the old man's eyes. The fisherman's song didn't stop, and the boat was still moving forward. A few days later, the two finally reached the other side. "Thank you." Lin Yu looked at the old man, handed over some golden leaves and said, "Go buy a pot of good wine." These weren't of much use to Lin Yu. The old man's fisherman's song made Lin Yu feel somewhat enlightened. Therefore, these golden leaves were worth it to Lin Yu. "Thank you, little brother." After expressing his gratitude with a smile, the old man rowed the boat and left. The boat disappeared on the snowy river surface. This time, the old man said with a smile, "It seems that fate is starting to spin again." Chapter 1425. Lin Yu did not notice the change in the old man's aura. They had already arrived at the Gauchan ancient country. This place was filled with a mysterious aura. The amount of Genesis Qi here was much higher than in Chu. Lin Yu finally understood why there were so many experts in the Gauchan ancient country. It was mainly due to the amount of Genesis Qi here. If he cultivated here, Lin Yu would be able to quickly advance without the support of pills. It was just that it would take more time. After the two arrived at the territory of the Gauchan ancient country, they did not stop. Instead, they stepped through the Dao Gate and headed straight for the Fuho country. The Fuho country wasn't very far from Chu. After crossing the river, they would arrive at the Fuho country after traveling another 10,000 miles. 10,000 miles was only half a day's journey for Lin Yu and Zhou Dongguang at their current cultivation level. When the sun set in the west, a golden halo shone on the white snow. Lin Yu and the other man saw a magnificent city with a sense of vicissitudes. This was the capital of the Fuho country. However, Lin Yu and Zhou Dongguang did not enter immediately. They arrived at a village dozens of miles away. The village was dilapidated and there was no one living here. "This is the base of our divine court," explained the black-robed man. But they saw a few black crows on a withered ancient tree. They were cawing in the snow, giving off an ominous feeling. There were many white bones here. It seemed that this place used to be prosperous, but it was massacred for some reason. Back then, the Fuho country suspected that there were spies here, so they massacred all the residents here. The black-robed man explained, "This place is desolate and uninhabited. So, our divine court chose this place as our base of communication." They arrived at an ancient well. There were a few crows on an ancient tree at the side. "Xing, you're finally back." One of the crows shouted with a hoarse voice that was close to a scream. "Damned crow, stop cawing," the black-robed man said impatiently. Every time he saw a crow, he would have a headache, but this crow had a very high status in the divine court. The black-robed man named Xing could only feel helpless. "Little Xingzi, how can you talk to Grandpa Crow like that?" Crow shrieked. As it spoke, it prepared to pounce down. Xing was obviously scared. "How many people have come to entrust this time?" Xing asked. The headquarters of the divine court wasn't here. He was just a middleman in the Fuho country. Just the contact person was already at the 7th step. It was enough to show how powerful the divine court was. 5? Crow couldn't remember clearly. It was as if he was too old and had become forgetful. "I knew it." Xing was used to it. A jade slip appeared in his hand, and he threw it into the ancient well. Several boxes appeared in the ancient well. Inside were some people's requests. There was even a deposit. Lin Yu saw that the deposit alone was a rare treasure of heaven and earth. It was of great use to experts at the 7th step or even higher. If that was the case, the strength and status of the person they wanted to assassinate would most likely have reached an extremely terrifying level. Only a few people knew about the divine court, and the contact point was the same. Even so, there were still many people who came to this place during the time that Xing was away. 7. Not bad, Xing said. This is a new member of the Divine Court. His name is Lin Yu. He has already received permission from the acting Divine Master of the Divine Court. Give him the costume. Xing pointed at Lin Yu and said to Crow. At this time, Crow looked at Lin Yu with his scarlet eyes. The scene was silent for a moment. Caw! A crow's cry rang out. Crow, who was almost bald, was so shocked that a few feathers fell from his body. What the hell? What the hell? Crow was so frightened that he flew up. Are you possessed? Apparently, Xing was already used to Crow's fussing over nothing. But after a long time, Crow still couldn't calm down. This obviously didn't make sense. A quarter of an hour passed. Crow didn't come down from the sky. He's afraid of me, Lin Yu said. From Crow's expression and actions, he could tell that something was wrong. But at the same time, he frowned slightly. Did Crow know him? Or did he see the power hibernating in him? After a long time, Crow slowly came back to his senses. He came to the branch and said, No, something is very wrong. You've obviously fallen. Why are you still here? Lin Yu didn't know if Crow was talking about how he had bin killed by the owner of the bronze coffin with a powerful move. How do you know? Lin Yu asked directly. He wanted to take advantage of the fact that Crow had not regained her composure to ask for some clues. In that battle you were obviously killed. I was just beside you. How could I not know? Crow said, I just took a few things from you. You didn't have to become a ghost and come here. Crow was still scared and looked at Lin Yu warily. Now Lin Yu was sure that Crow wasn't talking about him. Maybe it was just a living being that looked like him. There were more than billions of living beings in the world. If there was someone similar, it might not be a problem. But at the same time, Lin Yu thought of the expert who looked like Ancestor Lu in this world. Was there some secret? Lin Yu didn't know. He could only hope to learn something from Crow. From the conversation between Crow and Crow. Crow's seniority should be very high in the Divine Court. Although he was joking, his actions and tone were very respectful. Then why don't you return those things to me? Lin Yu continued. Okay, I'll return them to you. After I get them, you'll return to dust to dust. I'll continue to be free. Crow said and was about to take out the things. But now, his mood was much calmer. When he was about to take out the items, he suddenly shouted, No, you're not him. If you were, you would have already attacked me. Why would you say anything to me? You bad boy, how dare you cheat Grandpa Crow of his things? With that, he was about to attack Lin Yu. Okay, Crow Taoist, stop fooling around. He's just a new member of the Divine Court. As for the other things, Xing gradually became serious. It seemed that this news was very important, and he couldn't say it here. Crow calmed down. Regarding important matters, he could see it clearly. Therefore, he didn't continue to attack Lin Yu. These are the clothes of the Divine Court. Boy, take them. Crow said. Tell me what you know. Crow looked at Xing. Then he glanced at Lin Yu. It seemed that he attached great importance to Lin Yu. Perhaps it had a lot to do with the person he mentioned. Lin Yu knew a little about these things, but he didn't want to know. The most important thing now was to strengthen his own strength. Crow flapped his wings without the slightest divine power, but as the withered tree shook, Xing and his body disappeared on the spot. Even Lin Yu couldn't deduce their location when he used the power of the ancient characters. Even with his powerful divine consciousness, he couldn't capture their location. They seemed to have disappeared from heaven and earth. Even their imprints were gone. Chapter 1426. This surprised Lin Yu. When he used the power of the ancient characters, he had never encountered such a situation. However, Lin Yu didn't continue to try to deduce. An hour passed. Crow and Xing appeared in the main world. Crow looked at Lin Yu strangely. There was a puzzled look on his face. He seemed to have been suspecting Lin Yu's identity. However, Lin Yu didn't know why Crow looked at him strangely. Maybe it was because he looked like an old friend of his. Lin Yu could only guess so. Since you have joined the God Court organization, I want to make it clear that the God Court doesn't kill innocent people. If you are entrusted in the future, you have to remember this, Xing said slowly. Lin Yu nodded. He wouldn't kill innocent people either. The way the God Court organization acted was to his liking. This is the first mission. Let me see how strong you are, Xing said at this moment. Lin Yu took the jade slip from Xing's hand and saw that there was a person's detailed information recorded on the jade slip. This person was none other than the king of Fu Ho country. It recorded his life's deeds, slaughtering 3 cities, not sparing the old, the weak, women, and children. There were countless records about it. Lin Yu only took a simple glance. Lin Yu already knew that the king of Fu Ho country wasn't very strong. It was just that there were 2 6-step powerhouses in the residence. That was all. It wasn't difficult for Lin Yu. After Lin Yu put away the jade slip, he was ready to take action. He came to the King City, which was very prosperous. The God Court organization had already given him a complete identity. He could freely enter and leave the King City without being investigated. This time, Xing didn't follow him. He seemed to have something more important to discuss with Crow. Lin Yu came to the King City alone. He quickly understood the structure of this place. The king's residence was located at the eastern border of the King City. It covered a large area and it was difficult to travel around in a few hours. Lin Yu snuck in. At this time, he had already changed into the uniform of the Divine Court. He was dressed in black and looked very ordinary, but there was a mysterious aura on it that could conceal people's aura. Then, Lin Yu put on a ghost mask. It looked ferocious. Anyone who saw him would know that he was here to take their lives. This was the special uniform of the Divine Court. As long as one had the strength, there was no one who did not recognize him. When Lin Yu looked towards the Prime Minister's residence, he saw a white-haired old man sitting on an armchair. He sent everyone away, but there were 2 different auras on his body. Lin Yu has already concealed his aura, making it difficult for others to detect him. As Wang Xiang rotated the wooden armchair, the signboard began to rumble. Gradually, a secret chamber appeared up ahead. It was a dazzling sight. Wang Xiang slowly walked into the cave. Lin Yu hid his aura and followed him in. When Lin Yu reached the depths, Wang Xiang was already sitting on the dragon throne, drinking alone in a wine cup made of human heads. "It's about time to launch a mutiny," Wang Xiang said slowly. He looked at the king's robe hanging in front of him, which was embroidered with a vigorous true dragon. Wang Xiang had built this stone chamber for a long time, and he would come here every day to take a look. After all these years, Wang Xiang's power in the Fu Ho country had long been unimaginable. By now, Lin Yu had almost figured out who had entrusted him with this task. Lin Yu was still hiding in the dark. Just as Wang Xiang stood up, Lin Yu, who was close to him, suddenly launched an attack. He didn't hesitate at all, and he didn't even say a word. As the sword light flashed, Lin Yu condensed his strongest killing move. The method of the 8 tribes of Great Void completely turned this place into darkness. What happened? Wang Xiang was shocked. He didn't expect that someone would dare to make a move in his mansion. Left and right guardians. 2 green lights, 1 black and 1 white, appeared in Wang Xiang's sleeves, exuding a powerful aura. However, the 2 of them found it hard to stop Lin Yu's advance. Puff, in an instant. The left and right guardians were cut in half. Now, if one wasn't a 7th-step expert, it would be difficult to effectively suppress Lin Yu. There was no surprise at all. The left and right guardians were directly killed by Lin Yu. Their bones were ground to dust. Universe fire erupted at this moment. Universe fire was even more blazing in this world, and it could erupt with even more power. The 2 guardians were still breathing, but at this moment they were directly burned to dust, leaving only 2 ashes on the ground. Immediately after, Lin Yu condensed a flying sword again and directly cut off Wang Xiang's head. Everything happened in a single breath, in the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint. No one could react. Wang Xiang didn't expect that someone would dare to sneak into his mansion to assassinate him. But at this moment, Lin Yu had a bad premonition. "We've fallen into a trap," Lin Yu said calmly. The method of the 8 tribes of Great Void had not been completely eliminated. Lin Yu used a restriction to seal this place. The person he killed just now was not Wang Xiang, but someone else. It was Wang Xiang's puppet. Lin Yu disappeared from the stone room. But since he had already made a move, Lin Yu had no intention of stopping. He used the ancient word to deduce Wang Xiang's true location. His figure suddenly disappeared on the spot. It wasn't until Lin Yu found Wang Xiang's true location that news came from the stone room. It was a beautiful place with many heavenly treasures. It was simply a paradise in the world. It was hard to imagine how many treasures Wang Xiang had over the years. Oh no! The left and right guardians have been killed, and Wang Xiang's puppet is also dead. At this moment, a person who looked like an alchemist beside him, wearing a square scarf on his head, looked shocked. Wang Xiang's expression changed drastically. Just as they were about to retreat, a figure that resembled a god of death had already appeared here. It was Lin Yu. "Who are you?" Wang Xiang asked in surprise. "It's someone from the divine court." The alchemist was extremely shocked. However, there was a trace of cunning in the depths of his eyes, as if he had been prepared for Lin Yu's arrival. The hand behind his back slowly made a gesture. Lin Yu naturally saw it clearly. His powerful divine thought had already allowed him to investigate all the methods before he entered this place. He was very calm. As long as he killed, he would not leave any flaws. Puff! Lin Yu stretched out his finger, and the alchemist's arm that was making a gesture was instantly cut off. Blood dripped. The alchemist's forehead was full of cold sweat, and he was enduring great pain. At the same time, he was also filled with despair. The people from the divine court had come here. Wang Xiang's purpose had probably been exposed. Moreover, Lin Yu had already seen through his means, and he could not even resist. Everything happened too quickly. Almost as soon as Wang Xiang's puppet was killed, Lin Yu had already arrived here. Crossing a few miles in such a short time, this kind of strength was probably unimaginable. "Who sent you here?" The white-haired Wang Xiang naturally felt a strong fear from Lin Yu's strength. At this time, he asked with fear. However, he did not get a reply from Lin Yu. Finally, Wang Xiang's body appeared on the ground. Lin Yu took away all the things here, then returned to the town with Wang Xiang's body to report. Chapter 1427. In less than half a day, Xing was truly shocked. When he saw Wang Xiang's corpse, Xing sighed and said, "You seem to have many secrets." If Lin Yu hadn't plundered all the treasures in Wang Xiang's residence, he might have been even faster. It was just that Lin Yu didn't mention it. It was just that this speed was extremely shocking to Xing. According to his estimation, Lin Yu might need half a month's time. He didn't expect that he would succeed in just half a day. "I was just lucky," Lin Yu replied. Lin Yu was an existence who was about to break through to the supreme realm. In this world, he was probably at the 10th step. Killing a person was a piece of cake for him. "If I had made a move that day, I might have died in your hands." Xing smiled bitterly. He thought of Lin Yu's warning in the heaven abandoning sect. Now, Xing no longer felt that Lin Yu was being arrogant. He truly had such strength. Although this was Xing being humble, being able to enter the divine court was enough to show how powerful Xing was. An ordinary 7th-step powerhouse was probably no match for him. However, Lin Yu wasn't invincible. After handing in the mission, Lin Yu received contribution points and exchanged them for what he needed from the divine court. Now, he had gathered all the main ingredient. It was time for Lin Yu to refine the next pill. He opened up a cave abode on a mountain peak on the side of the town. He stood in front of the alchemy furnace. He took out the monster core of the pangolin beast he had obtained and took out a few heavenly treasures. Most of them had a strong reincarnation aura. Lin Yu had obtained them from the forbidden grounds. However, there were a few types, such as the mysterious yellow root and the heavenly star grass. He had exchanged them from the divine court. Saint Polarity Pill. It could allow a cultivator to break through to the Emperor realm. In other words, it corresponded to the 6th and 7th step. Now, this was the highest grade pill that Lin Yu could refine with the resources in his hands. In Lin Yu's opinion, the Saint Polarity Elixir was enough for him to break through to the 7th step. It had been a few years since Lin Yu had left. If not for the fact that he had cultivated the Taoist scripture and did not have any periods of fatigue, he would not have been able to recover. Lin Yu would never be able to reach that level. Lin Yu had now thoroughly integrated the alchemy skills he had mastered. Now, he was comparable to the 7th grade alchemists in this world. Moreover, this was because his cultivation was restricted. Otherwise, Lin Yu would have been able to refine Tier 8 or even Tier 9 pills. His talent in alchemy was in no way inferior to his talent in cultivation. However, in order to increase his strength, he had temporarily put aside his alchemy skills. Lin Yu continued to throw herbs into the alchemy cauldron. A few days had passed, and the entire mountain was filled with a medicinal fragrance. Auspicious beasts and auspicious birds were all gathering here. Multicolored light appeared in this place. However, Lin Yu had already expected this. In order not to attract attention, he had already set up a formation here. This prevented too much commotion from occurring. Xing, who was being taught by Crow, was also alarmed by Lin Yu's movement. He opened his eyes. That kid is concocting pills. Within the crow's scarlet eyes, 2 rays of light burst forth. Xing was also surprised. He said, I didn't expect Lin Yu to know how to refine pills. Moreover, it seems like his attainments are very high. He's at least a 7th grade alchemist, Crow said with certainty. Lin Yu's potential. Xing looked from afar. At this moment, a sense of frustration arose in his heart. He originally thought that his cultivation was slightly higher than Lin Yu's. Now, Lin Yu had mastered the art of alchemy and was already a 7th grade alchemist. His cultivation at the 7th step seemed unremarkable. Even in the Go-Chin ancient nation, 7th grade alchemists were rare. In a large sect, they would at least be a guest. They sat on endless wealth and status. With a single order, there would be countless experts willing to risk their lives for him. An alchemist of this level was enough to make many experts scramble for him. As expected of the legendary person prophesied by the divine court, Xing said slowly. Lin Yu's identity was very special. After the divine court's first divine master left, he left behind a prophecy. It said that in this world, there was a person who could lead the divine court into the endless domain once again. Once again, they would step into unparalleled power. In Xing's opinion, Lin Yu definitely had the potential to do so. However, Crow frowned at this moment and said faintly, since ancient times, geniuses like him were not rare. If we want the divine court to regain its glory, I'm afraid, there's still a long way to go. However, Crow's gaze was deep. He slowly closed his eyes and no one knew what he was thinking about. He seemed to be reminiscing. Crow had lived for a long time and had once followed the divine court's first divine court's master. However, in the end, he inexplicably fell into a deep sleep. Only now did he wake up. No one knew what had happened. Crow might have forgotten some of his memories because he had been in a deep sleep for too long. He had lost part of his memories. However, in Crow's eyes, the talent that Lin Yu was displaying was still not at a shocking level. It was enough to show how high his standards were. At this moment, Lin Yu had finished refining the Saint elixir. 3 simple and round elixirs appeared in his hand. There were mysterious elixir patterns on them. The grade was very high. They were almost flawless elixirs. Lin Yu looked at the elixirs in his hand calmly and said slowly, "Now, I just need to settle down and I can try to break through to the 7th step." In this world, Lin Yu's progress was terrifying. If word got out that he had reached the 7th step in 1 or 2 years, it would be enough to shock everyone. It was unbelievable. However, this had to do with the fact that Lin Yu had once reached the highest critical point. His settling down was very deep. Although he had never come into contact with the methods of this world, he could quickly grasp the things that he needed to pay attention to in each realm. Lin Yu put away the elixirs. Now, he was only missing the settling down of the 6th step. As long as he slowly refined the power of the powerhouse that looked like Ancestor Lu in his body, Lin Yu would not need long to reach the peak of the 6th step. According to Lin Yu's expectations, the power of the powerhouse in his body was enough for Lin Yu to cultivate to the peak of the 8th step. This power was definitely boundless. If Lin Yu did not have the God King's token, he might not be able to suppress this power and would explode and die. Lin Yu walked out of the cave abode that he had opened up. At this moment, he could see that the cave abode was surrounded by auspicious beasts and auspicious birds. At this moment, they were crawling on the ground, absorbing the medicinal power that overflowed from the elixirs. Just a little bit of medicinal power was enough to benefit them greatly. At this moment, there were already strange beasts and signs of people breaking through. Lin Yu did not care about these. The ranks of these strange beasts were too low. Although some of them had medicinal power, they were not very useful to Lin Yu now. Lin Yu came to the town. This place was still desolate. Xing lived in a rundown Taoist temple. At this moment, when he saw Lin Yu coming, he could not help but smile and say, "I didn't expect you to be an alchemist." "My skills are not up to par," Lin Yu said. "If a 7th grade alchemist is considered a mediocre alchemist, I'm afraid that no one in the Gaochen ancient country would dare to say that they are proficient in alchemy," Xing said. However, what he was most concerned about was what kind of elixir Lin Yu had concocted. According to Crow's description, it had reached the 7th rank. And now, Xing was also at the 7th grade. He was thinking about the few types of elixirs that Lin Yu could concoct that were useful to him. "Lin Yu, I have a request. Can you concoct a type of elixir for me? Here are the ingredients and the prescription," Xing said with a pleading tone. "Of course, I know the rules of alchemist. Just name a price and I will try my best to satisfy you." "Is it a prescription?" Lin Yu asked curiously. Prescription was the foundation of an alchemist. Normally, very few people would know about it. Chapter 1428. As long as it's within my ability, there's no problem, Lin Yu said. I can only concoct high-grade 7th-grade pills at most. That's more than enough. Xing was pleasantly surprised. Lin Yu's words meant that he agreed. Now that Xing's cultivation had reached a bottleneck, he needed this pill to break the deadlock. This is the pill recipe and the treasure. There's a total of 2 sets. Take them both, Xing said. There was a chance of failure in concocting pills. Especially the higher the grade of the pill, the higher the chance of failure. However, Xing had only collected 2 sets so far. He was still a little worried. He was afraid that the 2 sets were not enough. If he failed, the loss would outweigh the gain. He had asked the alchemy pavilion of the Gaochen ancient country. More than one 8th-grade alchemist said that he had to prepare at least 3 sets of this pill, and the chance of failure was very high. This made Xing flinch. He looked at Lin Yu with a worried expression. However, he had rarely heard words of praise from Crow's mouth. At this moment, his cultivation had reached a bottleneck. His cultivation in the past few days was in vain. Therefore, he chose to try it on Lin Yu. If it didn't work, he would think of a way to gather the herbs. 2 sets are more than enough, Lin Yu said. No matter how difficult it was to concoct a 7th-grade pill, it was not a problem for Lin Yu. Not to mention that his chance of success was a rare 90%. Even if he failed, he could use the power of the God King's decree to salvage the situation. Therefore, Lin Yu accepted both sets. Since this elixir was useful for increasing one's cultivation level, Lin Yu thought that it might be useful for him as well. The remaining portion was Lin Yu's reward for his hard work. Therefore, Lin Yu did not ask Xing for anything else. In order to gather these 2 sets of herbs, Xing had spent almost all of his contribution points. Lin Yu did not add insult to injury. "I'll give you the pill in 3 days," Lin Yu said. However, after thinking for a moment, he asked, "Are there any missions now?" Although Lin Yu was not worried about breaking through to the 7th step, Lin Yu had already witnessed the power of the Divine Court when he had first exchanged for medicinal herbs. Just the collection and foundation of this branch had already reached an astonishing level. There were even some divine items that Lin Yu had never seen before. Without a doubt, this would be of great use to the utmost realms. Lin Yu thought about the stone sword that had been lying dormant in his body. Even though it was a supreme artifact, if there was a way to repair it in this world and restore it to the level of a Grand Mist artifact, why not? Therefore, contribution points were also very important. These tasks have been handed over to other cultivators. If anyone wants to ask the Divine Court for help, they will come here and be distributed in half a month, Xing said with embarrassment. Lin Yu was slightly regretful, but he did not show any anxiety. Through the conversation with Xing, Lin Yu thought of a way to quickly accumulate divine items, that was to sell the pills that he had refined. Thinking of this, Lin Yu was already prepared to do so. At that time in the Heaven-Leaving sect, he still had grade 4 and grade 5 pills that he had not used. Perhaps he could use these pills to accumulate something for his breakthrough in the future. However, Lin Yu was not anxious about this. Grade 4 and grade 5 pills were not very valuable. To be precise, even if they could be exchanged for divine items, they might not be of much use to him now. Then, I'll help you refine the pills first. Lin Yu made a decision immediately. Lin Yu entered the cave again. However, Xing followed him now. It's taboo to be disturbed when refining pills, Lin Yu said. I know this rule. I'll guard outside the cave to protect you. Xing smiled. Although he had never revealed his identity or his true appearance, Lin Yu also felt that although Xing's cultivation was strong, he was easy to get along with. He was relatively easygoing. Lin Yu did not refuse. It was not that Lin Yu really did not want to be disturbed, but he did not want to expose the Divine King's badge. Or, it was inevitable that he would feel unbalanced if Xing saw that he had refined one set of pills. Lin Yu ignited the alchemy fire again. However, he was not using the ordinary flame in his body now, but the universe flame. This flame was extremely terrifying. Even though Xing was outside the cave, he could feel the heat. It seems that Lin Yu once obtained a great fortune, Xing said with a hint of surprise. Although he was well versed in alchemy, he knew a little about the rumors in the alchemy world. Some high-level alchemists would look for special flames between heaven and earth to increase the refinement of herbs or to improve the grade of pills. Xing had also observed some high-level alchemists who had special flames refining pills, but he did not feel it as deeply as he did now. Even he felt a strong threat from the universe flame that Lin Yu used. I'm afraid this is not as simple as a special flame. Xing frowned as time passed. For alchemists, special flames were rare divine items. For cultivators, it was a killing weapon. Xing did not know what the flame that Lin Yu was using was. However, if he tried to sense it, he felt like he had fallen into the universe and was about to be refined. In the end, Xing shook his head helplessly. Lin Yu's combat strength was probably above his. Just by using this mysterious flame, it was likely that he would not be able to endure it. In the blink of an eye, 2 days passed. Suddenly, lightning could be seen gathering in the sky. This was the phenomenon that would occur when a very high-grade medicinal pill was about to be formed. Some pills whose effects were too heaven-defying would suffer the jealousy of the heavens, which was the legendary pill tribulation. Xing was excited. However, he was not overjoyed and lost his judgment. With a wave of his black robe, 4 large banners with golden patterns appeared. They seemed to have the power to imprison everything. At this time, they shot out in all directions. They sealed off an area of 10 miles with the mountain as the center. At this time, the pill tribulation had formed. Wind and clouds gathered. Boom! The lightning was like a giant snake that was thousands of feet long, directly cutting through the sky. Lin Yu's cave residence was blasted into smithereens. Lin Yu's figure appeared. Facing the pill tribulation, he did not have the slightest fear. "You leave first," Lin Yu said to Xing. At this time, Lin Yu raised his hand and directly hit a few seals on the pill furnace to prevent the pill from escaping. A pill of this grade was refined from rare heavenly and earthly treasures in the world. It was equivalent to the beauty of heaven and earth, and after being refined by humans, it already possessed a simple spiritual intelligence. Now that the pill sensed the lightning tribulation, it wanted to escape. If one wanted the pill to be perfect, it was necessary to go through the lightning tribulation. Lin Yu directly took out the pill furnace. The pill furnace was brought out by him from the heaven-abandoning sect. As the lightning tribulation struck, the pill furnace instantly turned into molten iron and splashed in all directions, burning through the ground and the cliff. The molten iron could not get close to Lin Yu's body. At this time, there was a layer of hazy light on his body. Even if the lightning tribulation descended, it could not invade his body. This was the power of the ancient characters. Long ago, Lin Yu had already mastered 9 ancient characters. However, it was difficult for him to use all of his power now. He could only turn into a layer of hazy halo to resist powerful attack. Even though the halo looked very weak, it would probably take an 8th-step expert 3 moves to break it. And now, the lightning tribulation of a 7th-grade pill could not hurt Lin Yu. Chapter 1429. Xing, who was watching from the side, was extremely shocked. He didn't know what defensive means Lin Yu had used to be able to withstand the lightning tribulation that even he was shocked by. There were more and more mysteries surrounding Lin Yu. However, the higher-ups of the Divine Court didn't tell Lin Yu about his background. At Xing's level, he didn't have access to it. When Lin Yu went to complete the task, Xing was only responsible for contacting the leader of the Divine Court and letting Crow know about it. Xing looked at Lin Yu's figure in the distance and muttered to himself, "Where are you from?" The divine abilities and spells that Lin Yu had displayed were something that he had never seen before. At this moment, Xing began to have doubts in his heart. The pill tribulation lasted for 6 hours and gradually began to weaken. The vast pill light directly dispersed the thunderclouds. The 3 pills finally revealed their true appearance. They had already transformed into 3 young spirits, and were about to flee while babbling and making noises. However, Lin Yu was already prepared. At this moment, he directly attacked with great strength. At this time, the 3 pills still wanted to break free, but it was already too late. The 3 pills turned into their original forms with the luster of jade. The true spirit pill, done. Xing muttered to himself. At this moment, he was extremely excited. He didn't expect Lin Yu to succeed so easily. The true spirit pill could break through one's own bottleneck, and at the same time, it nurtured pure power. It was very useful for cultivators, especially because Xing broke through too quickly in the early stage, causing his own bottleneck to the 7th step. At this time, with the true spirit pill, he didn't have to worry about this problem. After all the aura dissipated, Lin Yu took out 3 pills that were still warm, came in front of Xing, and handed the pills to him. Only one. I know this is the rule of the alchemy world, Xing said at this time, forthright. 1 set of herbs, 3 pills. It was extremely rare for an 8th grade alchemist. Xing didn't hesitate. The most important thing for him now was to break through his own bottleneck. Although the true spirit pill was precious, Xing had already seen Lin Yu's potential. In the years to come, Xing would definitely have to ask Lin Yu for help. Therefore, taking out 2 true spirit pills was worth it for Xing. Lin Yu didn't refuse. Okay, I'll take it. The true spirit pill was a 7th grade pill. For special people, it had surpassed the 8th grade pill. Being able to break through bottlenecks was of great use to 8th step cultivators. Lin Yu could use these 2 pills to exchange for his own need. I need to go to King City. Lin Yu said, I'll be back in half a month. He wanted to find out more about elixirs in the current royal city. Xing loved the true spirit pill so much that he could not bear to part with it. But in order to prevent the medicinal properties from dissipating, he still put it away in the jade bottle. After carefully putting away the pills, Xing nodded and said, The Divine Court doesn't have too many restrictions on the people in the organization. It's fine as long as we can contact each other when the time comes. Xing didn't ask too much about what Lin Yu wanted to do. Everyone had their secret. In this regard, Xing did a good job. After I refine these true spirit pills, I'll come and find you, Xing said. The Divine Court also had its own forces in the royal city. Xing gave Lin Yu a token. With this token, it would be much more convenient for him to move around royal city. Lin Yu looked at the token made of black gold, which had a musky fragrance. He nodded and didn't refuse. After everything was done, Xing went into seclusion. Crow seemed to be unable to leave this area. Although he also wanted to go to the royal city with Lin Yu, in the end, he could only sigh regretfully. Lin Yu came to the royal city again. Obviously, the news of Wang Xiang's death had spread. For a moment, everyone was in a state of panic. The streets were heavily guarded, checking everyone who entered and left the city. Because Xing had already prepared Lin Yu's identity, he didn't encounter too many obstacles and entered the city easily. Lin Yu came to a restaurant. There were many cultivators here. Because the North Star ancient nation was founded by force, the vassal states under it all advocated cultivation. There were many sects or organizations that could teach cultivation. After entering the royal city, cultivators could be seen everywhere. Lin Yu found a seat by the window and sat down. However, when Lin Yu sat down, the people around him revealed strange looks. At this moment, the waiter also arrived. Sir, would you like to change seats? The waiter looked troubled and said, Thank you for your understanding. Lin Yu stood up. He wasn't afraid of anything, but he didn't want to make things difficult for the waiter. He could see that the manager hated the waiter and wanted to skin him alive. However, just as Lin Yu was about to change seats, a voice came out. Who are you to sit in my seat? At this moment, a young man in a brocade robe came. He was holding a beautiful woman in a thin veil in his arms. His eyes were full of pride. However, perhaps because of excessive indulgence, there were deep dark circles around his eyes. His face was pale, as if he was terminally ill. His cultivation had reached the 5th step. In the entire royal city, he was an expert. However, the aura on his body was very weak, as if it was piled up by pills. Your Highness, this guest doesn't know that this is your exclusive seat. He has already left. The waiter quickly bowed and explained. Do you have the right to speak here? A crisp slap sent the waiter out of the restaurant and down the stairs. Blood flowed from his mouth and nose. He looked like he was half dead. The man pulled out the woman's underwear and wiped his hands seriously. His eyes were filled with disdain and disdain. You dirty my hands, you reckless thing. At this moment, he looked at Lin Yu and said coldly, Lick the chair you sat on. At this moment, the manager was so scared that he didn't dare to step forward. Some people even left their seat. The man was the 7th son of Fu Ho. In the royal city, he was notorious. Because of his mother's love, no one dared to provoke him. I was scolded by my father. I'm full of anger. I wanted to eat something and then find you to vent my anger. The seventh prince played with the woman in his arms and said coldly, "Now there's an appetizer." He looked at Lin Yu playfully. Everyone couldn't bear it and their eyes were filled with sympathy. They all thought that Lin Yu couldn't escape this calamity. The seventh prince was famous for being ruthless. Even if he licked the chair clean, he wouldn't let Lin Yu go. "You're very confident," Lin Yu said indifferently. He faced the seventh prince's ruthless eyes and was very indifferent. "What did I say? Can't you hear me?" The seventh prince was furious. "What are you, deaf?" "Pa," a crisp sound. But it wasn't Lin Yu who was hit. It was the seventh prince who flew out of the restaurant and fell heavily on the ground. "This is the money for destroying the restaurant." Lin Yu casually threw a bag of silver to the manager. The scene in front of them frightened everyone. They were all dumbfounded. They didn't expect Lin Yu to be so strong. "Doesn't this person know the seventh prince?" Someone was stunned. Although looking at the seventh prince lying on the street like a dog eating poop, they began to worry about Lin Yu at the same time. Chapter 1430. In Monarch City, no one dared to treat the royal family like this. In the Gauchan ancient country, the royal family was the most respected. Even the sects that cultivated were considered as vassals. This was very different from other places. When they saw Lin Yu's clothes, they knew that Lin Yu did not come from a sect or the royal family. He was probably just a rogue cultivator. But now he dared to do this. Obviously, he had violated a great taboo. "How dare you hit me? Even my father has never hit me like this." The seventh prince staggered to his feet. He was furious. At this moment, he stood up and looked at Lin Yu, who was looking at him coldly. But when he pointed at Lin Yu's cold gaze made him feel as if he had fallen into the nether abyss. His heart palpitated. Extreme fear surged into his heart. The seventh prince's next words were stuck in his throat. He could not say anything for a moment. But this only lasted for a moment. The seventh prince's saber appeared in his hand. There were still bloodstains on it that had not dried up. This was left behind by Marquis Fu when he fought on the battlefield and killed countless enemies. There were 2 words on it: "Protect the country." It was scarlet. It shook everyone's heart. Before the seventh prince could speak again, Lin Yu had already appeared in front of the seventh prince. Slap, then there was another slap. The seventh prince did not have time to react. He was sent flying. "People like you don't deserve to hold this saber," Lin Yu said calmly. It was as if he was a senior teaching a junior a lesson. Lin Yu was merciless. The seventh prince stood up and slapped him. After a few slaps, the seventh prince lost his temper. The beautiful lady that he was hugging was stunned. She looked through the hole and saw the scene on the street. She was obviously scared out of her wit. The shopkeeper did not dare to pick up the money that Lin Yu gave him. If he were to settle the score later, everyone in the restaurant would be punished. Lin Yu slapped the seventh prince more than 10 times. In the end, the seventh prince no longer dared to get up. He could only howl on the ground, personal guards, where the hell did you go?" Seeing the seventh prince being beaten up, no one stepped forward to stop him. Firstly, he admired Lin Yu's courage and terrifying strength. Secondly, he wanted to see the appearance of the seventh prince being taught a lesson. The seventh prince was wailing on the ground. Every time he got up, he would be slapped. In the end, his face was swollen like a pig's head. His mouth and nose were bleeding, and his teeth were falling out. Lin Yu was still as indifferent as ever. "Have you experienced the pain of others?" Lin Yu stood in front of the seventh prince, and looked down at the severely injured seventh prince. But this was far less than Little Fool's injuries. Little Fool was just an ordinary person. After being slapped by a fifth-step cultivator, he was already half dead. Lin Yu did not use his cultivation. He only used the strength of his physical body to educate the seventh prince. I want you to die a horrible death. I want your bones and tendons pulled out. I want you to light up the sky lantern for 100 years. The seventh prince said viciously. Bang! He kicked out. The seventh prince flew dozens of feet away. The sound of his ribs breaking could be clearly heard. The seventh prince did not get up. Lin Yu directly kicked him. The street vendors dodged. Their carts were flipped over. It was a mess. However, Lin Yu still gave some money to the innocent vendors who were robbed. Lin Yu's figure was like a ghost. When the seventh prince hit the pillar, he barely stabilized his body. Lin Yu was already in front of him. Before the seventh prince could speak, he kicked him again. If this goes on, I'm afraid someone will die. Someone whispered. Their eyes were filled with worry. However, someone immediately said, since the young man has already made a move, he's not afraid of this. A butcher saw the coldness in Lin Yu's eyes. It was definitely not an act. It was like a butcher who had killed pigs for decades. He no longer had the slightest bit of mercy when facing a live pig. Faced with the butcher's analogy, the crowd felt that it was inappropriate and immediately covered his mouth. The seventh prince could only whimper in a low voice now. He could not even spit out a word. Just as Lin Yu kicked the seventh prince for the last time, a soldier riding a powerful mutated beast with dense scales on his body came to the street. They sensed the commotion here. What are you all doing? A middle-aged man who looked like a commander came down from the back of the mutated beast. His tone was filled with endless majesty. General Cheng! Someone exclaimed when they saw the identity of the person who came. They were all extremely shocked. General Cheng had followed Marquis Fu to the border back then and was known for his ruthlessness. That young man is in trouble, someone whispered. At this moment, the seventh prince, who was no longer in human form, was kicked to the foot of the mutated beast by Lin Yu. General Cheng also saw the person who was covered in blood. It was the seventh prince. His eyes gradually became cold. How dare you hurt His Highness the seventh prince? General Cheng berated. The power of his cultivation directly formed a strong wind and swept out. However, to Lin Yu, this was not much of a pressure. It only blew the corner of his clothes and black hair. Everyone was retreating, unable to withstand this force. Even the mutated beast knelt on the ground and kept wailing. Uncle Cheng, save me. Kill that person. The seventh prince used the last of his strength and said to General Cheng. After saying that, he fainted. Capture the offender. If he resists, kill him on the spot. General Cheng looked at the unconscious seventh prince and said coldly. Lin Yu looked at General Cheng indifferently. Is this how your superiors do things? Lin Yu looked at General Cheng and the people surrounding him and said calmly. Some cultivators saw Lin Yu and could not help but be shocked. General Cheng is an existence of the seventh step. What is this young man relying on? Even at this time, he is neither servile nor overbearing. He even dares to question him. Someone could not help but exclaim. General Cheng looked at Lin Yu and said, Are you qualified to question me? Chi, a beam of sword chi appeared out of nowhere. It directly cut off a strand of General Cheng's hair, and a bloody scar appeared on his cheek. How dare you hurt General Cheng? The soldiers surrounding Lin Yu saw that General Cheng was injured and rushed forward in anger. They wanted to cut Lin Yu into pieces and chop him into minced meat. Back down. You are no match for him. General Cheng's expression gradually became serious. He had been on the battlefield for many years and naturally had sharp senses. Even if Lin Yu did not reveal his cultivation, he was definitely not an ordinary cultivator to be able to cut off his hair at such speed. May I know which sect you are from? General Cheng withdrew his contemptuous attitude and asked seriously. With such a cultivation, he was probably not as simple as a rogue cultivator. Do you think you are qualified to question me? Lin Yu replied indifferently. He had already sensed that the person in charge of receiving Lin Yu from the divine court had arrived. Judging from his aura, he was even stronger than Xing's cultivation. The divine court had never accepted weaklings. "Do you know where this is?" General Cheng asked coldly in the face of Lin Yu's arrogance. On the battlefield, he was the god of war who terrified his enemies. Now, he was being looked down upon in Monarch City. "General Cheng, you are really not qualified." At this moment, an old man with two boys beside him arrived at the scene riding a huge book. "Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion." Someone recognized the old man. "Pavilion Master, what is the meaning of this?" General Cheng frowned when he saw the Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion. He naturally knew of the Pavilion Master's powerful background. "Are you sure you want to say it here? Can you bear the price?" the Pavilion Master said faintly. Chapter 1431. Go to Hu Ho and explain it clearly. "It's good for you and that prince," the Pavilion Master said. Some cultivators had heard that the Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion was very powerful. Even Hu Ho had to call him teacher. They didn't expect that the Pavilion Master would come for an unknown young man. "Okay." General Cheng frowned and said, "Take His Highness away." Facing the Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion, General Cheng didn't dare to have any objections. He only ordered his subordinates and nodded. She watched as General Cheng carried the unconscious seventh prince away. The Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion looked at Lin Yu and nodded. "You must be the person appointed by the Divine Master." "Don't worry, I'm here. Nothing will happen." The Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion had clearly deduced what had happened here. At this moment, he said to Lin Yu. Lin Yu nodded. They boarded the Pavilion Master's Dharma artifact. Not long after, they arrived at the Imperial Palace in the center of the royal city. The Imperial Palace was magnificent. There were a total of 999 steps of white marble stairs. Below them was the corpse of a python that was about to transform into a dragon. It carried a powerful pressure. However, Lin Yu and the others didn't pass by there. Instead, they went directly to the Imperial Palace. At this moment, in the main hall of the Imperial Palace, he was wearing a python robe and a jade crown. He was tall and sturdy, and he had an aura of being in a high position for a long time. When he saw Lin Yu and the Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion, he turned around and said, "Wake him up." Fu Ho's eyes were filled with anger. General Cheng woke the seventh prince up with a pill. General Cheng sighed. He knew that the seventh prince might be crippled today. He could have provoked anyone, but he had to find someone from the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion. "Pavilion Master, please take a seat." Fu Ho stretched out his hand. The Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion sat on the chair leisurely. "How should I address you?" "Please take a seat," he said to Lin Yu. Someone who could make the Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion personally welcome must have a high status in the Divine Court. As a marquis, Fu Ho was naturally able to see all of this. Lin Yu sat next to the Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion. Even when facing Fu Ho, who was at the 8th step, he was still really calm. At this moment, it was unknown how the 7th prince's mother found out about the 7th prince's encounter and came to the Imperial Palace. With her face full of tears, she saw the 7th prince who was almost beaten into a cripple. "My son, who is it? Who beat you up like this?" "I will definitely." The 7th prince's mother did not finish her words. Marquis Hu frowned and slapped the princess consort. Half of her face was swollen. Now, the Pavilion Lord of the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion was here. If they were to allow the 7th prince's mother to act impudently here, they would be completely offending the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion. Others might not know, but Hu Ho was very clear. The reason why he was able to become a noble of the North Star ancient nation was largely because of the divine court's help. At the same time, he also knew how powerful the divine court was. He could probably overturn the entire Gauchian ancient nation. It's you who spoiled him and caused him to make a big mistake. Hu Ho said coldly. Men, throw Princess Consort Ming into the cold palace. Someone directly dragged Princess Consort Ming out of the imperial palace. My lord, I'm your favorite consort. You can't do this to me, Princess Consort Ming begged bitterly. However, Hu Ho was unmoved. He had been busy with government affairs and had turned a blind eye to the mistakes made by the seventh prince. He had never thought that he would make such a big mistake at this time. He remembered that he had just reprimanded the seventh prince today. He did not expect that not long after, he would provoke people from the divine court. Moreover, from the attitude of the pavilion master of the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion, this person's position in the organization was not low. This undoubtedly caused Hu Ho to become nervous. If he angered this person, the entire Fu Ho country would not be able to bear his anger. This was not a joke. The previous vassal state was a good example. Where is this, father? The seventh prince slowly woke up. He endured the intense pain. He was the first to see his father. He did not realize the seriousness of the problem at all. When he saw General Cheng, he immediately shouted, Uncle Cheng, did you capture that person and cripple him? Your Highness, shut up. General Cheng was also covered in cold sweat. Fu Ho's favorite princess consort Ming, who was the seventh prince's mother, had already been thrown into the cold palace because of this matter. Now, the seventh prince was still mentioning this matter. Was he looking for death? Speak, what did you do? Fu Ho's aura directly lifted the seventh prince up and made him kneel on the ground. The seventh prince was scared silly by Fu Ho in front of him. He had never seen his father treat him so harshly. Father, The seventh prince wanted to admit his mistake. In the past, when he committed a crime, he would admit defeat and beat around the bush. At this moment, he was still trying to use this method. Did I ask you anything else? Fu Ho stared over. The pressure of an eighth-step expert directly broke a few of the seventh prince's bones. However, Fu Ho's aura passed through. Even though the seventh prince was in pain, he still didn't faint. Father, Today, I just had a conflict with an unknown thing. The seventh prince said. How dare you? Fu Ho was furious. A shout sent the seventh prince flying hundreds of feet away. Who knew how many of his bones were broken? His organs were all shifted and it seemed like he was about to die. Sir, please make a decision. Fu Ho came in front of Lin Yu and pointed at the seventh prince, who was now a pile of mud, and said seriously. Now, he couldn't care less about his identity as a king. Lin Yu's identity was too shocking. His Fu Ho country definitely couldn't take it. You can teach him, Lin Yu said calmly. With Lin Yu's eyes, he naturally knew that Fu Ho was protecting his son's life. He beat the seventh prince up like that and there was no way he could do anything. If Lin Yu attacked, he would at most kill him. The worst result would be that Lin Yu killed the seventh prince and everything would be over. However, he knew that with Lin Yu's identity, he wouldn't be so calculative with a prince. That was the truth. After hearing Lin Yu's reply, Fu Ho's expression didn't change and one couldn't see what he was thinking. Today, sir, you came to Fu Ho country and I didn't expect my unfilial son to offend you. I apologize to you. Fu Ho bowed. Drag him down. Once his body is healed, send him to the border and never return to the imperial city. Fu Ho said directly. At this moment, he looked towards General Cheng. His eyes were filled with helplessness. General Cheng knew what was going on and immediately knelt on the ground. I am in the wrong and I am willing to be punished. I will remove your position and send you to the border. Fu Ho sighed. General Cheng was his left and right hand. During the war, General Cheng saved Fu Ho's life. When he saw that General Cheng had suffered such a calamity because of his son, his eyes were filled with unbearable pain. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.